Chapter 1240, Asura in Danger. Chapter 1240, Asura in Danger. What happened that requires you to make a trip personally, young master? Nian Qi asked curiously. Su Zimo replied, something happened at Brother Yan's side? Nian Qi was surprised. Asura Yin Beichen? Yes. Su Zimo nodded as he reminisced about the past. After the Thousand Crane Tea Party, Dharma characteristic Tao lords of many sects and factions arrived and entered 100 Refinement sect, prepared to cause trouble for him. When the Asura heard about this, he rushed over without hesitation. Those Dharma characteristic Tao lords at that time were all renowned figures. Among them, there were even titular disciples such as Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Tao Lord Cloud Rain. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was the number 1 of the previous Dharma characteristic ranking. Tao Lord Cloud Rain was the second of the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. As for the Asura, he had only just advanced to the Dharma characteristic realm. Despite that, he was fearless and invoked a massive battle against the 9 Dharma characteristic Tao lords outside 100 Refinement sect. That battle was earth-shaking. 6 of the 9 Tao lords were killed by the Asura. Although a large part of the reason was because Tao Lord Immortal Sword was severely injured when he fought Tao Lord Extreme Fire back in 100 Refinement sect, the powerful methods displayed by the Asura were still shocking. Su Zimo watched the battle from afar. That battle was still unforgettable. At that time, he even asked the Asura about his injuries. However, the latter merely brushed it off casually. To think that the injuries left behind by the Asura in that battle had yet to recover. One of the messages on the spirit crane was about how the Asura's essence spirit was injured. An injury to the essence spirit was extremely difficult to heal. Later on, when Su Zimo caused a huge trouble in the Tao inheritance ground and the situation was critical, many 100 Refinement sect cultivators suggested that they draw a line between them and Su Zimo. However, the Asura disregarded the injuries of his essence spirit and 100 Refinement sect, wanting to protect Su Zimo and escape to the end of the world. An elder of Elixir Yang sect admired the Asura's temperament and gifted him the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir that was preserved for many years. The 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir was an ancient elixir that had been lost a long time ago. It was extremely rare and was the best healing medicine for essence spirits. It was no exaggeration to say that it was a priceless treasure. The Asura received the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir but did not consume it himself. Instead, he gave it to someone else. It was that person who sent the spirit crane. In the battle outside 100 Refinement sect, 3 of the 9 Tao lords survived. Apart from the 2 titular disciples who managed to escape, Tao Lord Immortal Sword and Tao Lord Cloud Rain, this was the 3rd person to survive. She was Sword Sect's Qin Pian Ran. At that time, Qin Pian Ran was betrayed by Tao Lord Immortal Sword and wanted to die. Although the Asura had never said it, Su Zimo could tell that he was compassionate. The Asura who achieved his Tao through killing and possessed a merciless saber technique was a sentimental person. Tao Lord Immortal Sword, who was known to be righteous and loyal, was a heartless person. That was truly an immense irony. Su Zimo had long sensed that the Asura was treating Qin Pian Ran differently. However, he did not expect the Asura to feed Qin Pian Ran the precious 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir. Of course, the spirit crane was not sent only because of the Asura's injuries. It was because another monster incarnate in Asura sect wanted to replace Yin Beichen as the new titular disciple and take over the title of the Asura. That titular disciple sent a challenge letter to the Asura. Given the Asura's current state, he might be able to win against ordinary Dharma characteristic Tao lords. However, he would definitely lose against this monster incarnate of the Fiend sects. Qin Pian Ran naturally hoped that Su Zimo could head to the Middle Continent and help the Asura tide through this calamity. At the end of the spirit crane, Qin Pian Ran even mentioned that she had sent the spirit crane behind the Asura's back. Given the Asura's temperament, he would not plead for help even if he met with such a calamity. However, she was worried and did not want anything to happen to him. She had already severed her connection with the Immortal sects and Sword sect. However, the Asura had always been alone without any siblings or friends. On the other hand, He had many enemies. After much thought, she concluded that Suzimo was the only one who could help the Asura, and that was why she sent the spirit crane. As for Suzimo, he decided to head to the middle continent right away without any hesitation upon receiving the spirit crane. If he knew that the Asura's essence spirit was injured and had yet to recover, he would have set off long ago to look for medicine that could heal it, let alone the fact that the Asura was in trouble. When do you intend to leave, young master? Nianqi asked. Now. Suzimo was already heading out of the cave abode. I'll accompany you wherever you want to go, young master. Outside the cave abode, Taoyao rushed over as well. There will definitely be trivial affairs along the way, and I can help with those by your side. Suzimo could sense that Taoyao was merely reluctant to part with him. There's no need. He shook his head. Both of you will stay here. In a few days, a child around 5 or 6 years old will come to Ethereal Peak. You can just stay by his side. Ah. Taoyao froze for a moment. Before he could react, Suzimo had already leaped up and lightning flashed around his body as he disappeared from the spot. Worried about the Asura, Suzimo wanted to head to the middle continent as soon as possible. Who is the boy that young master is referring to? Taoyao blinked and asked Nianqi with a lost expression. I don't know either. She shook her head. We'll know in a couple of days. Let's just wait here. 5 days later. At the foot of Ethereal Peak, a child around 5 or 6 years old arrived. He had delicate features and his eyes were clear, deep as the sea, as though they contained endless secrets. Where did this child come from? It's truly not easy for this child to be able to arrive here safely in this deep forest. A few Foundation establishment cultivators guarding the entrance of Ethereal Peak looked over with surprised expressions. The child stood still in front of the mountain gate, gazing at a gigantic stone gate not far away in a daze. Why? You want to join Ethereal Peak as a disciple? A Foundation establishment cultivator laughed and followed the child's gaze. This stone gate is used to test the spirit root. I heard that when our sect's senior Desolate Marshal joined the sect, he caused the stone gate to explode. This current one was built later on. When he heard those discussions, the child recalled the past and smiled. The fact that this child is able to arrive here means that he has affinity with Ethereal Peak. Should we let him test his spirit root first? A Foundation establishment cultivator said, Child, pass through that stone gate. Let's take a look. The child smiled without saying anything and walked towards the stone gate. There was no reaction from the stone gate. A few Foundation establishment cultivators shook their heads slightly with disappointed expressions. One of them said, It's fine if you don't have a spirit root. Even if you can't do immortality cultivation, you can cultivate the martial Dao. Child, I'm a martial Dao cultivator. The person revealed his strong arm and said, I've already cultivated to the 3rd transformation of the martial Dao, bronze skin, steel bones. Even superior grade weapons can barely hurt me. As he said that, the cultivator took out a saber and slashed his arm, leaving merely a white scar. The cultivator had a smug expression as he handed the saber to the child. Child, why don't you try and slash me? How old is this child? Can he even lift this saber? The others shook their heads. Right then, the child received the saber and squeezed gently with his pink and fair palm, crushing the saber into an iron ball. Thereafter, he rubbed his hands together. The iron ball turned into gravel and scattered down. He rubbed the metal like it was mud. The cultivators at the entrance were dumbfounded with shocked expressions. They could no longer speak. Chapter 1241, Reunion. Chapter 1241, Reunion. That saber was a middle-grade spirit weapon, but it was turned into sand by the child's tender palm. Many cultivators looked at the child as though they were looking at a ghost. Could this child be transformed from a fiend demon? A thought crossed the mind of a Foundation establishment cultivator. Right then, 2 figures sped over from Ethereal Peak like a golden couple. It was Taoyao and Nianqi. For the past few days, the 2 of them had been waiting near the sect entrance and rushed over the moment they heard any activity. Their gazes landed on the child, and they shuddered. The child gave them a familiar feeling. If one focused their attention, they would be able to tell that the child's features were extremely similar to Suzumo's. The only reason why they could not be seen clearly was because they were not fully grown out. The child was the martial Tao true body, Suzumo's prime body. After cultivating for 6 years at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, his prime body had already cultivated to the 9th transformation of the martial Tao, perfected Dragon Elephant Force. Given the strength of the prime body, even a Khanate spirit weapon would be shattered, let alone a middle-grade spirit weapon. The descent of his prime body was a variant to begin with. It was not within the reincarnation cycle, nor heavenly secrets. The prime body inherited everything of Suzumo and specialized in the martial Tao. However, he could only continue to deduce if he wanted to continue cultivating the martial Tao after the 9th transformation. Neither the Green Lotus True Body nor the Dragon True Body had the energy to do so. Neither of them were as suitable as the prime body to comprehend the martial Tao either. Therefore, his prime body left the Dragon Burial Valley and arrived at Ethereal Peak. He was prepared to memorize Ethereal Peak's cultivation techniques and secret skills while cultivating there before deducing. "Young master," Tao Yao shouted in a testing manner. "That's me." The prime body nodded. Although he was only 6 years old, the aura he exuded was the same as Suzumo. There was no hint of childishness. "I'll leave for Pingyang Town after cultivating in Ethereal Peak for a period of time. Do you want to follow me?" The prime body asked Tao Yao. "Sure." Tao Yao agreed readily. He was not familiar with many people in Ethereal Peak. It was more comfortable for him to reside in Pingyang Town instead. To him, Pingyang Town was his home. The prime body intended to return to the starting point of his cultivation as well. He will return to that courtyard to continue deducing the martial Tao in order to perfect it. That courtyard held an unusual meaning for Suzumo. Middle Continent. Suzumo did not rest at all. From the moment he left Ethereal Peak to the crossing of the North region and entered the Middle Continent, it merely took 3 days. That speed was already comparable to a conjoint body mighty figure. Even though the spirit crane said that the monster incarnate of the Fiend sects challenged the Asura to a fight a month later, Suzumo was still worried and rushed over early. Suzumo determined his direction and continued on his way. A day later, he arrived at the depths of a mountain range and looked at the dense bamboo forest before him. Descending, he paused for a moment before entering. In the bamboo forest, there was only the sound of wind rustling the bamboo leaves, making it seem tranquil and peaceful. Not long after, Suzumo's gaze penetrated the layers of bamboo shadows and saw a spacious empty space where a simple wooden house sat. A figure leaned against the door. The figure's black hair fell casually onto his shoulders, and he had a cold expression. A jar of strong wine was placed beside his feet as a long saber with a bloody aura laid on his knees. The Asura, Yin Beichen. Yin Beichen had just raised his wine jar and was about to drink it in one gulp when he suddenly frowned. As though he sensed something, he said indifferently, "Hatred. The month isn't up yet. You're early." Although his essence spirit was injured, he could still sense that someone was peeping from the bamboo forest. However, he did not notice who it was. Suzumo strode out of the bamboo forest and arrived before the empty space, smiling at Yin Beichen. Yin Beichen was first stunned. Immediately after, his eyes revealed the joy of reuniting after a long time, and he could not help but laugh. "Haha, so it's Brother Su." "Brother Yin," Suzumo called and strode forward. "Come sit." Yin Beichen tugged at Suzumo's arm and pulled him to sit down. He took out another jar of strong wine from his storage bag and handed it to Suzumo with a smile. "I was worried that no one would accompany me to drink when you came. You're really on time." The two of them bumped their wine jars and drank a mouthful of strong wine. "I haven't congratulated you properly for creating your martial Tao. Now's the perfect time. Let's drink till we're drunk." Yin Beichen laughed again. Suzumo lamented internally. After many years, Yin Beichen had changed significantly. He was now filled with warmth. The initial blood stench he reeked had become extremely faint, almost imperceptible even. Unsurprisingly, his change should be attributed to a single person. Right then, a white-bloused woman walked out of the wooden house. She had smooth skin and watery eyes. Her brows were raised slightly, and she exuded a heroic aura. Suzimo stood up and pretended to be surprised. My, isn't this fellow Taoist Qin from Sword Sect? There was naturally no way Suzimo could expose the fact that Qin Pianran sent him a message behind the Asura's back, hence he feigned ignorance. Qin Pianran smiled gently with a hint of gratitude in her eyes. Just as she was about to speak, Yin Beichen waved it off. Brother Su, stop pretending. Pianran should be the one who called you here, right? Suzimo was momentarily stunned. Yin Beichen continued, your timing is too coincidental. I reckon that Pianran must have asked you to come behind my back because she's worried about me. Yin Beichen was a smart man. He had guessed it the moment he saw Suzimo. Beichen, I'm sorry. Qin Pianran lowered her head slightly. Suzimo knew that there was no need to continue hiding the truth and nodded. Fellow Taoist Qin is worried about your safety. There's no need for you to blame her. Why would I blame Pianran if she's worried about me? Yin Beichen burst into laughter and turned to tug at Qin Pianran's palm. It's been a long time since I've been reunited with my brother. I'm more than happy and can't thank you enough instead. Qin Pianran blushed. She felt embarrassed that the two of them were so intimate in front of Suzimo. Suzimo smiled. It seems like you've been doing well all these years, big brother. I'm even envious that you have someone to accompany you every day. After a brief pause, Suzimo continued, however, bro, there's something I have to say about you. Why didn't you tell me that your essence spirit was injured? There's no point telling you. The Asura shook his head. There's no way to heal it. When she heard that, Qin Pianran's expression darkened. It's all my fault. If I hadn't consumed the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir back then, Beichen's injuries would have healed a long time ago. It's fine. I'm doing all right now, aren't I? Yin Beichen did not mind at all and waved it off. But, your future cultivation. Qin Pianran wanted to speak but stopped, afraid that she would agitate Yin Beichen. With an injured essence spirit, it was difficult for one's cultivation to advance. Who doesn't die? Even for conjoint body mighty figures, they will still die 20,000 years later. Yin Beichen said, as long as I'm with you, a day is equivalent to 10,000 years. I still have thousands of years of lifespan. In that perspective, I'll live longer than even Mahayana patriarchs. Qin Pianran's eyes were bloodshot, and she lowered her head in silence. Chapter 1242, Ancient Fiend Emperor. Chapter 1242, Ancient Fiend Emperor. Suzimo asked, Brother Yin, when you mentioned hatred earlier, that's the monster incarnate of Asura sect. Yes? Yin Beichen nodded with a slightly grim expression. Tao Lord Hatred became famous much earlier than me and obtained half of the Hatred Sutra. His combat strength is heaven-defying, and he's invincible in the Fiend sects. The Hatred Sutra? Suzimo narrowed his eyes. The Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra's half-martial ancestor Imperial Sky had memories of the Hatred Sutra. The Hatred Sutra was created by one of the most terrifying Fiend Emperors of the ancient era and was known as the Fiend Emperor Hatred. The fact that he held the title of the Emperor of the Fiend Tao was proof of how strong the Fiend Emperor was. Legend has it that the Fiend Emperor Hatred was initially unknown. Later on, due to a massive change, his personality changed drastically and he hated the world, all living beings and everything in the world. Under that intense hatred, the Emperor exploded completely, slaying immortals, Buddhas, and the primordial 9 races in a domineering manner. Eventually, he created the shocking ancient Hatred Sutra. That cultivation technique was known as the #1 mystic classic of the Fiend sects. Its might was imaginable. Although the Fiend Emperor Hatred was invincible, his life was extremely miserable and he spent it in hatred. Even when he was conferred the title of an ancient emperor, he did not have anyone close to him or any close friends. His ending was tragic as well. His hatred eventually reached its limits, and he even began to hate himself. In the end, he committed suicide in Tianhuang mainland after the Ancient War, leaving behind a regrettable legend. The fact that a fiend emperor met with such an end caused countless people to lament. Yin Beichen continued, Tao Lord Hatred entered a tomb by accident and obtained half of the Hatred Sutra. With that, he rose and established a Tao title, Hatred. Everyone knows what he's thinking. He wants to inherit everything from this ancient fiend emperor and become the new fiend emperor Hatred. The fact that he was already invincible among the fiend sects with just half of the Hatred Sutra was proof of how terrifying that cultivation technique was. Almost all paragons and monster incarnates had encountered many opportunities to be able to cultivate to that level. Su Zimo was not the only one. Yin Beichen said, later on, I joined Asura sect and obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance and many other opportunities. I comprehended the Asura Sutra and entered the Void Reversion realm. During the fight for the title of Asura, I fought against Hatred, who was still at the Void Reversion realm at that time, and was lucky to win by half a move. Although Yin Beichen said those things calmly, Su Zimo could sense the intensity of the killing intent from those words. Su Zimo had some understanding of Yin Beichen. There were only two people who obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance, him and Yin Beichen. Yin Beichen's talent was definitely not weaker than his. The moment Yin Beichen entered the Dharma characteristic realm, he could conjure a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 85 feet tall. That was enough to show how strong Yin Beichen was. Even so, Yin Beichen merely won by half a move back then. Yin Beichen continued. After the fight for the title of Asura ended, Hatred disappeared and never appeared again. Nobody knew where he went. More than 10 years ago, Hatred reappeared and shocked all the fiend sects. Su Zimo had a vague guess and murmured, could it be? Yin Beichen nodded. He obtained the complete Hatred Sutra, the rebirth of the Hatred Sutra. This meant that a new fiend Emperor Hatred was about to rise. When Hatred returned, he was already at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Starting from Asura sect, he overwhelmed the Dharma characteristic paragons of the 7 fiend sects. The titular disciple of Illusion Fiend cult was defeated in less than 10 moves. After that, the other titular disciples of the fiend sects went silent and avoided the battle. Hatred was conferred as the #1 saber of the fiend sects. It was not surprising for him to possess such combat strength if he inherited the complete Hatred Sutra. Yin Beichen had a grim expression. Notwithstanding the fact that my essence spirit is injured and my combat strength has decreased significantly, even if I was in my peak condition, I might not be a match for him. Now that Hatred has returned, no one can stop him anymore. It was no wonder why Yin Beichen said that. During their battle back then, Hatred merely lost to him by a single move after comprehending half of the Hatred Sutra. How scary was Hatred now that he had the complete Hatred Sutra? On the other hand, there was no fear in Su Zimo's eyes. After experiencing the Tao inheritance ground, cultivating for close to 5,000 years and fusing with more than 30 ancient inheritances, Su Zimo believed that he could suppress all his peers and overwhelm all strong foes. Instead, there was a hint of anticipation in his heart to experience this #1 ancient fiend sutra. Su Zimo asked in a low voice, "What's the height of Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic?" Tao Lord Hatred was already at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Even if he knew that Tao Lord Hatred had condensed a 90 feet Dharma characteristic, Su Zimo would not be surprised. "I don't know." Unexpectedly, Yin Beichen shook his head and gave that answer. Su Zimo was momentarily stunned. Yin Beichen said, "That's the reason why he's so terrifying. Ever since he returned, he fought several times and suppressed many Dharma characteristic monster incarnates of the Fiend sections. However, he has never used his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic." Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. It was normal for him to not use his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic to suppress ordinary Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. However, the people that Tao Lord Hatred suppressed were titular disciples of the Fiend sects. It was a little terrifying to be able to suppress the titular disciple of Illusion Fiend cult without even using his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. Pian ran, "Actually, there's no need for you to alarm Zimo." After a while, Yin Beichen smiled. "That's because I had no intention of fighting against hatred to begin with." Qin Pian ran and Su Zimo froze for a moment, confused. Yin Beichen explained, "If hatred wants to challenge me, it's to fight for the title of the Asura. I've already decided to give up on that title." Yin Beichen's palm caressed the long saber on his knees. "If hatred wants the title of the Asura as well as this Asura saber, I'll give both to him unreservedly." Su Zimo was silent. Under normal circumstances, given Yin Beichen's character, he would definitely not display weakness even if he was injured. To think that he would make such a choice. However, on second thought, it was understandable that Yin Beichen would make that choice. That was because the Asura was worried. When an Asura that achieved the Tao through killing had attachments, he was no longer an Asura. It had to be said that Yin Beichen had changed a lot over the years. "Can you bear to?" Su Zimo asked. Yin Beichen smiled. "These are just empty titles. The only thing I'm slightly reluctant about is this Asura saber that has fought by my side for many years. However, it doesn't matter as well." There was a hint of freedom and magnanimity in Yin Beichen's tone. It was a true form of letting go. "Zimo, I'm tired. I don't want to continue fighting in the cultivation world." Yin Beichen said, "All these years, Pian Ran and I have been living far away from secular affairs and strife in this bamboo forest. I've received an unprecedented tranquility in my heart, and I'm delighted. From now on, without the shackles of the Asura, Pian Ran and I will look for a paradise and live in seclusion. No matter what calamities or battles there are outside, it will be none of my business." Yin Beichen meant that he wanted to let go of all attachments, and he was not going to fight against hatred. He did not wish for Su Zimo to fight in his place against hatred either. "I understand." Su Zimo nodded. "Brother, I respect your decision." Chapter 1243, Tao Lord Hatred. Chapter 1243, Tao Lord Hatred. For the next period of time, Su Zimo stayed in the bamboo forest and was in no hurry to leave. Although Yin Beichen had already decided to withdraw from the fight in the cultivation world, Su Zimo was still worried about his essence spirit's injuries. The next day, he sent out a few messenger spirit cranes. They flew towards Elixir Yang sect, 100 Refinement sect, 1000 Crane sect, Puppet sect, Ethereal Peak, and other sects and factions. All of those sects and factions had Su Zimo's kin and friends. Half a month later, although the sects and factions sent messages one after another, none of them had any solution. Although Qin Pian Ran did not say anything, she could not conceal her disappointment. "Don't be hasty," Su Zimo replied. "There's still no news from Xiaoning. She's already a titular disciple of Elixir Yang sect. I'm sure she'll have a solution." Another 5 days passed. The spirit crane of Elixir Yang sect flew into the bamboo forest. Qin Pian Ran hurried over and opened the spirit crane eagerly. An injury to the essence spirit is extremely difficult to heal, and the most effective elixir is the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir. However, this elixir has long been lost, and Elixir Yang sect doesn't have it either. At that point, Qin Pian Ran's eyes dimmed. A large part of the reason why Yin Beichen was in such a state was because he wanted to save her. She felt extremely guilty. Su Zimo removed a small bottle tied to the spirit crane's leg. "These are 7 elixirs that Xiaoning sent over. They have some healing effect on the essence spirit as well. You can give it a shot." Although those elixirs could not compare to the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir, they could only give it a shot. For the next few days, Yin Beichen attempted to consume an elixir daily. However, despite trying all 7 elixirs, his essence spirit showed no signs of recovering. "Brother, fellow Taoist Qin, don't be anxious." Su Zimo said, "I've already asked Ethereal Peak to keep an eye out for the various auction houses and marketplaces. If there's any news of the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir, I'll definitely help you guys get it." "That's the only way." Qin Pian Ran sighed internally. Another 3 days passed. This day, Suzimo and the other two were chatting casually in the wooden house. All of a sudden, Suzimo felt something and turned around. "What's wrong with that?" Qin Pianran asked and followed Suzimo's gaze instinctively. A figure stood in the bamboo forest. "Ah!" Qin Pianran shuddered and exclaimed. She was a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord of Sword Sect to begin with. Be it in terms of combat strength or temperament, she was superior. Even a conjoint body mighty figure or a Mahayana patriarch would not cause her to lose her composure as such. However, that figure was truly way too terrifying. Just by standing there, it was like a gigantic black hole that emitted an endless hatred that could devour everything. The hatred could even affect a cultivator's mind. If one's Tao heart was weak and tainted by that hatred, it would be crippled and they would lose without fighting. Tao Lord hatred. Suzimo was the only one who could maintain his composure against the envelopment of that hatred. Even Yin Beichen frowned. Suzimo looked at Tao Lord hatred calmly. Tao Lord hatred had an average build and wore black robes. His black hair draped over his shoulders and his eyes were dark as he walked over slowly, dragging a saber that was shrouded by Fiend Qi. The saber sliced through the ground silently, leaving a clear scar. Suzimo looked at the saber and his pupils constricted. That saber was extremely terrifying. Even he felt waves of shock from the hatred that was gathered. "Hatred? You sure are punctual." Yin Beichen spoke. "You came in a month indeed, not a single day later." "Hee." Tao Lord hatred laughed and walked into the wooden house without replying or pausing. "You're injured?" He swept his gaze and saw Yin Beichen's condition. "It's just a small injury," Yin Beichen replied indifferently. Tao Lord hatred grinned. "To think that you would end up in such a state as well, Yin Beichen. There's always someone better out there. In this generation, there are many paragons and monster incarnates. There are many people who can hurt me, so I'm naturally nothing much," Yin Beichen replied. "No." Tao Lord hatred shook his head and pointed at Yin Beichen. "I'm not referring to your injuries, but your heart. Your heart is no longer the heart of the Asura." Yin Beichen was silent. Suzimo praised internally. Without exchanging blows or testing the waters, Tao Lord hatred saw through Yin Beichen's reality. Tisk, tsk, tsk. Tao Lord hatred's gaze shifted and landed on Qin Pianran. "What a pity. Everyone says that a gentle place is the tomb of a hero. To think that even you, Yin Beichen, can't escape it." He closed his eyes and sniffed gently before nodding. "Yes, not bad. A little sharp, a cultivator of sword sect." Qin Pianran could not sit still. For some reason, she felt uneasy in front of Tao Lord hatred. Suddenly, Tao Lord hatred opened his eyes and said with a fake smile, "Yin Beichen, how about I kill that woman?" "Hatred, what are you trying to do?" Yin Beichen's eyes widened. Tao Lord hatred laughed and said leisurely, "I'm doing this for your own good. The only way to have the Asura return is by having this woman killed." "Hatred." Yin Beichen hollered softly, "I admit defeat for this battle. You can have the title of Asura as well as this Asura saber. I have nothing to do with Asura sect, the Fiend sects, and the cultivation world anymore." "Admit defeat?" Tao Lord hatred had a regretful expression and sighed. "It's truly hard to imagine that those words would come from you, Yin Beichen." Thereafter, he laughed and shook his head. "Yin Beichen, you're truly way too naive. Do you think you can just back off from the fight and the cultivation world just like that? Since you've started cultivating, there are many choices that are not up to you." Yin Beichen took a deep breath of air. "Hatred, what do you want?" "Of course, it's to retrieve the Asura title," Tao Lord hatred replied. Yin Beichen frowned. "I've already said that I've admitted defeat. From now on, you'll be the Asura." "No, no, no." Tao Lord hatred had a mocking expression as he waved his finger. "It's not that simple. I'll take back the Asura title the same way you snatched it from me. Do you think that I'll let you off just because you admit defeat?" Suddenly, Tao Lord hatred's expression turned menacing and his features were squeezed together. emanating a torrential hatred. I lost everything in the battle for the title of Asura back then. Honor, status, reputation. I've been thinking about you all these years, Yin Beichen. Su Zimo respected Yin Beichen's choice. Therefore, he remained silent and watched coldly from the sidelines. However, he had already realized that today's matter would not end peacefully. Tao Lord hatred was completely fiendish, and his mind was affected by the Hatred Sutra. It was hard to tell if Tao Lord hatred had cultivated the Hatred Sutra or if the sutra had turned him into a fiend. Sensing Tao Lord hatred's hatred, the fiend's saber in his hands trembled slightly as well, as though it was extremely excited and buzzed endlessly. Chapter 1244, Massive Battle. Chapter 1244, Massive Battle. Although all 4 people present were at the Dharma characteristic realm, the difference between their combat strength was too great. Qin Pian Ran was definitely a paragon of the Dharma characteristic realm. However, her face was pale and her heart trembled against the hatred released by Tao Lord hatred. Yin Beichen's essence spirit was injured, and he was frowning slightly as well, feeling a sense of pressure. There was a flash of anger in his eyes. If it was more than 10 years ago, he would not have retreated even if his essence spirit was injured and would have fought against Tao Lord hatred right from the beginning. But now, he held emotional baggage and truly did not want to fight against Tao Lord hatred anymore. Of course, apart from that, there was another reason why he did not want Su Zimo involved. On the one hand, Tao Lord hatred was now the #1 saber of the Fiend sex and possessed the inheritance of the Hatred Sutra. He was equivalent to a second Fiend Emperor and had a noble status in the Fiend sects with the protection of countless experts. If Su Zimo were to offend him, it would be equivalent to offending the entire Fiend sects. On the other hand, the outcome of Su Zimo's fight against Tao Lord hatred was unpredictable. If Su Zimo won, he would end up offending the Fiend sections. If he lost, his outcome would be even worse. No matter the outcome of this battle, it was extremely disadvantageous for Su Zimo. Hatred. At the end of the day, there's no deep-rooted feud between us. Yin Beichen said, if you take away the Asura saber today, the entire cultivation world will understand that you are the true Asura and no one will remember me. Qin Pian Ran lowered her head in silence. She knew that Yin Beichen's compromise and forbearance was all for her and them. Yin Beichen took a deep breath of air and grit his teeth. As though he had made up his mind about something, he said softly, hatred. I promise you that I'll leave the cultivation world forever. In the future, Yin Beichen will cease to exist in the cultivation world. Beichen, Qin Pian Ran exclaimed softly with a hint of heartache. Up till this point of his cultivation, Yin Beichen had never been weaker than anyone. He achieved his Tao through killing and was invincible. His title as the Asura was something that struck fear in the hearts of orthodox cultivators. How could he have ever said anything as such? But now, even the Asura had to bow down. Fu. Tao Lord hatred laughed and looked at Yin Beichen mockingly, shaking his head. Yin Beichen, you're truly way too naive. In this cultivation world, who can truly retreat just because they want to? How dare the Asura actually think of letting go of everything? How ironic. In the face of Tao Lord hatred's mockery, Yin Beichen merely remained silent and endured it. As though he thought of something fun, a mocking look flashed through Tao Lord hatred's eyes. How about this? Kneel in front of me and beg for mercy. How about I let you off after a few good kowtows? Yin Beichen did not move at all and was expressionless. However, veins popped up on his forehead and blood vessels popped out. It was clear that he was emotional. Sensing the struggle in Yin Beichen's heart, the smile in Tao Lord hatred's eyes intensified. He enjoyed the feeling of being in control of everything and stepping on his former enemies ruthlessly. He loved the joy of humiliating and trampling on them wantonly. He did not care whether Yin Beichen chose to fight or not. If Yin Beichen did not fight, he would make Yin Beichen suffer a fate worse than death. If Yin Beichen were to fight, the only thing awaiting him would be death. Ever since he arrived, he had no intention of letting Yin Beichen off. Right then, a chuckle sounded. The laughter carried a hint of mockery and disdain that was rather piercing to Tao Lord Hatred. He turned around slowly, and his gaze landed on Su Zimo. Ever since he arrived, this was the first time he was looking at Su Zimo properly. "Oh." Tao Lord Hatred revealed a playful expression and asked, "Were you the one laughing earlier on?" It had been a long time since someone dared to provoke him like this. "Zimo." Yin Beichen shouted with a worried expression. Su Zimo waved it off and said unquestionably, "Brother Yin, leave this matter to me." He could respect Yin Beichen's choice, but he would definitely not watch the latter suffer such humiliation. Tao Lord Hatred came to a realization. "I understand. You're here to help Yin Beichen." Ha 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 ha. Tao Lord Hatred could not help but laugh. He looked at Su Zimo as though he was looking at an idiot and lamented, "Some people really don't know what's good for them. You dare to come and help him without knowing who I am? Do you know who I am?" Su Zimo did not reply and asked instead, "Oh, who are you?" Tao Lord Hatred asked casually. In truth, he did not care who Su Zimo was in his eyes. The latter was already a dead man. "I'm Desolate Marshal," Su Zimo said indifferently. "Desolate Marshal?" Tao Lord Hatred was slightly stunned. That Tao title sounded familiar. After a moment of silence, his pupils constricted slightly and his gaze shone brightly. "You're Tao Lord Desolate Marshal who established his martial Tao and condensed two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics?" The name Desolate Marshal was known to the world a long time ago. In just a few years after the battle at Dragon Tiger Sect, the news of him condensing two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics had already spread through the middle continent. Tao Lord Hatred had already heard of Desolate Marshal's name the moment he returned. Good, good, good. Instead of being shocked, Tao Lord Hatred was delighted and nodded repeatedly. "Among the current Dharma characteristic paragons, you're the only one worthy of me fighting. Desolate Marshal, you came at the right time. You still want to kill me?" Two divine lights burst forth from Su Zimo's eyes in a domineering manner. He stood up slowly and his black hair swayed without any wind. An extremely terrifying aura burst forth from his body, as though a divine being was awakening. A terrifying and majestic aura surged over like a tsunami towards Tao Lord Hatred. Su Zimo founded the martial Tao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. Thereafter, he entered the Dharma characteristic and everyone paid their respects to him. He had long accumulated a force that no one could match. If it was any other Dharma characteristic Tao Lord, they might not even have the courage to attack Su Zimo. At that moment, Tao Lord Hatred was motionless in the face of the situation as Fiend Chi spewed out from his body. The negative emotions of hatred and vengeance were released completely, matching Su Zimo's aura. The two monster incarnates of the Dharma characteristic realm had finally collided. "Hurry, retreat." Yin Beichen already knew that this battle was inevitable and hurriedly brought Qin Pianran out of the wooden house. The moment the two of them left, the wooden house disintegrated into dust against the auras of the two monster incarnates, Su Zimo and Tao Lord Hatred. "Desolate Marshal, I'll show you what a true monster incarnate is today." Tao Lord Hatred reared his head and howled into the skies. The Fiend Saber in his hands buzzed and trembled, emitting a pitch-black Fiend Chi that was cold and dark. This is the Hatred Fiend Saber, and it was the personal weapon of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. However, the power of this saber has diminished significantly with the passing of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. Tao Lord Hatred said, "But I'll make this Fiend Saber regain its fiendish might of the past. Desolate Marshal, it's your honor to die to it." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. It was no wonder why he felt his heart skip a beat from that Fiend Saber. It was the personal Fiend Saber of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. That Fiend Saber was way too terrifying. Up till this point of Su Zimo's cultivation, that was the only weapon that caused him to feel a tinge of fear. Chapter 1245, Essence Spirit Fight. Chapter 1245, Essence Spirit Fight. With a slap, Su Zimo took out the Mystic Magnet Mountain from his storage bag and smashed it towards Tao Lord Hatred. As Su Zimo entered the Dharma characteristic realm, His dharmic powers increased exponentially. By now, the mystic magnet mountain was 1,000 feet tall, and it descended from the skies like a 100-story building with a huge shadow. The only reason why Suzimo summoned the mystic magnet mountain right away was to hold back the Fiend Saber. Mystic magnet mountain. Tao Lord Hatred's gaze intensified as he recognized the ancient unique treasure right away. This is a great treasure. Unfortunately, you must be dreaming if you think that you can hold back my Fiend Saber with this mystic magnet mountain. His arm trembled, and his Fiend Saber released streams of pitch-black Fiend Chi. They surged towards the mystic magnet mountain above him with immense hatred. Before the mystic magnet mountain descended, the entire mountain was already shrouded by the Fiend Chi, and its glow dimmed instantly. By cultivating the Hatred Sutra, one could condense a unique Fiend Chi of hatred that contained extremely strong negative emotions. It was ever-changing and could destroy dharmic weapons with ease with torrential fiend might. Thankfully, the mystic magnet mountain was an ancient unique treasure. If it was any other ordinary dharmic weapon, it would have been destroyed by the hatred Fiend Chi. Swash! Tao Lord Hatred strode forward and swung the Fiend Saber in his hands. Fiend Chi burst forth and a gigantic pitch-black Fiend Saber condensed in midair, descending from the skies. Before the Fiend Saber even slashed down, all sorts of negative emotions surged and affected Suzimo's Tao heart. Suzimo praised internally. It was no wonder why the Hatred Sutra was the #1 Fiend Sutra of the ancient era. That Fiend Chi could affect a cultivator's mind and heart. If one's Tao heart was not steady, they would not be able to last long against the shroud of the Hatred Fiend Chi, let alone fight against Tao Lord Hatred. However, the person Tao Lord Hatred was facing was Suzimo. This was Tao Lord Desolate Martial who had received more than 30 ancient inheritances and deduced the martial Tao with experience accumulated over 5,000 years. His Tao heart was absolutely indestructible against fire, water, or even heaven and earth. Even if the ancient Fiend Emperor was the one here personally, he might not be able to shake Suzimo's Tao heart, let alone Tao Lord Hatred. Sure. Suddenly, a green beam of light shot out from Suzimo's glabella and spun in midair, emitting a green glow. The Creation Green Lotus. The Grade 6 Creation Green Lotus of the past had lost its stem and leaves, leaving only this lotus platform. Although it was no longer as enigmatic as before, this lotus platform was still incomparably strong. Under the channeling of Suzimo's essence spirit, the Creation Lotus platform spun and blossomed slowly. 54 white lotus petals opened up and mist rose with a resplendent glow. Clang! The Fiend Saber collided heavily against the Creation Lotus platform. The Creation Lotus platform trembled gently. Suzimo focused his gaze. Although the Creation Lotus platform blocked the attack, it was slightly disadvantaged in this clash. Since it was not a complete Creation Green Lotus, the Creation Lotus platform could not defend against this shocking ancient Fiend Saber. I can't waste time with him. Suzimo judged the situation instantly. It was difficult for the Hatred Fiend Saber to suppress the Creation Lotus platform within a short period of time. However, if things dragged on and the Creation Lotus platform was completely tainted by the Hatred Fiend Chi, it would most likely be rendered immobile like the Mystic Magnet Mountain. Suzimo's eyes flashed coldly. A green glow burst forth from the Creation Lotus platform and emitted a boundless sharpness, forming a green sword instantly. This was a killing technique targeted at the Essence Spirit Green Lotus Sword. Slay. Suzimo pointed forward and hollered softly, instant thunder. Through the endless void, the Green Lotus Sword descended instantly and stabbed towards Tao Lord Hatred's glabella. It's an Essence Spirit secret skill. Tao Lord Hatred's expression changed slightly. He felt a strong sense of danger from that green sword. He had never felt this way ever since he obtained the Hatred Sutra. Even when he was defeated by Yin Baichen previously, he was only defeated by half a move. It was completely impossible for Yin Baichen to kill him. But now, that green sword could threaten his life. Devouring Fiend Cave. A powerful spirit consciousness fluctuation burst forth from his glabella and formed a pitch-black fiend cave in front of his forehead. The center of the fiend cave caved in continuously, as though it could suck in everything in the world. Poof! The green lotus sword pierced right in and disappeared before long, entering the pitch-black fiend cave. There was a slight pause. Boom! The fiend cave exploded. 54 green lotus seeds fell, and were already dim. Tao Lord Hatred released an Essence Spirit secret skill and blocked the green lotus sword completely without suffering any damage. That green lotus sword could even kill conjoint body mighty figures. However, Tao Lord Hatred's combat strength was even more terrifying than most conjoint body mighty figures. The only person who could defend against the green lotus sword unscathed with an Essence Spirit secret skill was the past monster incarnate of the immortal sects, Dean. With a thought, Su Zimo controlled the Creation Lotus platform and put away the 54 green lotus seeds. If those green lotus seeds were exposed to the hatred fiend Chi, they would be destroyed after a long time. After returning to the Creation Lotus platform to nourish themselves, the fiend Chi could be cleansed from them and they would be revitalized. I've long heard that Desolate Martial possesses a universal utmost treasure. Now that I'm seeing it for myself, it truly lives up to its reputation. Tao Lord Hatred grinned and said in extreme disdain, "However, you're truly way too naive to think that you can injure me with such methods. Is that so?" Expressionlessly, Su Zimo lowered his gaze and said coldly, "Take another attack from me then." A bedazzling golden light shone from his glabella and his terrifying spirit consciousness condensed rapidly, forming a golden swastika symbol. The entire void trembled when the ancient word descended. A series of sacred Sanskrit sounds seemed to echo from the firmaments. At that moment, the fiend Chi around Tao Lord Hatred was significantly suppressed. Rulai Dermic Seal. The Essence Spirit secret skill recorded in the Great Day Rulai Sutra was extremely terrifying and took a huge toll on one's Essence Spirit. Back then, Su Zimo killed the titular disciple of Malevolent Earth sect with this Essence Spirit secret skill. Another Essence Spirit secret skill. Sensing the terror of that word, Tao Lord Hatred's lips twitched viciously. In a fight between cultivators, even if it was a life and death battle, they would not release their Essence Spirit secret skills right away. After all, a fight between Essence Spirits was extremely dangerous, and even if one won many times, it would be easy for their Essence Spirits to be injured. However, Su Zimo released Essence Spirit secret skills after a single round of exchanging blows. Furthermore, he released 2 of them in succession. He did not even condense any heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. He wanted to kill his opponent's Essence Spirit directly. The moment the 2 of them exchanged blows, they did not test the waters and released killing moves one after another, revealing their trump cards. Sensing Su Zimo's killing intent, Tao Lord Hatred was even more enraged and his hatred deepened. He channeled the Hatred Sutra and the Fiend Chi within his body surged out, purging away the descending golden light instantly. Hatred slash. Suddenly, a Fiend Saber condensed from spirit consciousness flew out from Tao Lord Hatred's glabella. Similar to the Fiend Saber in his hands, it slashed towards the swastika symbol that was flying over. Tao Lord Hatred released his second Essence Spirit secret skill as well. Chapter 1246, Endless Hatred. Chapter 1246, Endless Hatred. The saber collided against the swastika symbol. Although there was no earth-shaking sound when the 2 Essence Spirit secret skills collided, the space where they met distorted. Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran felt their hearts skip a beat. Back when Yen Beichen's Essence Spirit suffered an irrecoverable injury, it was because it fought against the Essence Spirits of a few Tao Lords. Now that the 2 Essence Spirit secret skills collided, the energy fluctuation that spread out was even more terrifying than Yen Beichen's battle. Not good. Qin Pianran frowned and whispered, "That golden word of the Buddhist monasteries is clearly being suppressed by Hatred's Fiend Saber." When the 2 Essence Spirit secret skills clashed, Su Zimo's Rulai Dermic Seal was the one disadvantaged. Zimo has just entered the Dharma characteristic realm. Although his essence spirit is comparable to a conjoint body mighty figure, hatred has already cultivated to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, and his essence spirit is superior to Zemo's. Although Yin Beichen's essence spirit was injured, his eyesight was still present, and he could see things even more clearly. It was definitely not a fluke that Tao Lord Hatred was able to suppress all the paragons of the Fiend sex and be invincible among his peers upon his return. Yin Beichen continued, "But don't worry, Zemo has many trump cards as well. He won't be defeated so easily." The moment he said that, there was an outcome to the essence spirit fight. The Fiend chi on the Fiend's saber intensified, and a powerful sharpness burst forth once more with a torrential hatred. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks appeared on the Rulai Dermic seal. It was clear that it could not hold out any longer. Ever since Su Zemo started cultivating that essence spirit secret skill, it had always been successful, and he could even kill his opponents across major cultivation realms. But now, it was destroyed by a cultivator of the same cultivation realm. To be fair, the reputation and terror of the Hatred Sutra was above the Great Day Rulai Sutra to begin with, coupled with the fact that Tao Lord Hatred's essence spirit was even stronger. It was only logical that this would happen. Desolate Marshal, you must have a death wish for choosing to fight against my essence spirit. Tao Lord Hatred roared in laughter. Although the power of his essence spirit Fiend Saber had decreased significantly, it was still flying towards Su Zemo. Su Zemo's expression was unchanged. Suddenly, his left wrist lit up with a golden glow, and a barrier of light that was filled with golden symbols appeared beside him. Mingwang prayer beads. Boom! When the Fiend's saber collided against the barrier, it could hold on no longer and dissipated gradually. Essence Spirit Dermic Weapon? Although the Mingwang prayer beads were hidden beneath Su Zemo's robes, Tao Lord Hatred guessed it instantly. You sure have a lot of treasures on you. Tao Lord Hatred sneered. Unfortunately, those treasures are about to change owners. Su Zemo's gaze shimmered, and he hesitated for a moment. He had another essence spirit secret skill, the Spirit Vanquishing Whip. However, he could not ascertain whether Tao Lord Hatred would be able to release a third essence spirit secret skill to fight against his Spirit Vanquishing Whip. If he took another blow head-on, his essence spirit would be severely injured. On the other side, Tao Lord Hatred was wary as well and did not dare to release his essence spirit secret skill casually. Vast Sea of Hatred. Tao Lord Hatred conjured hand seals and released a top-tier dermic art of the Hatred Sutra. The Fiend chi around him rumbled and gathered endlessly, forming an endless black ocean in midair that surged towards Su Zemo. Although Su Zemo's Tao heart was indestructible, it would be difficult for him to break free if he was engulfed by this sea of hatred. Rise! Su Zemo conjured hand seals and hollered softly. Suddenly, two massive divine beings appeared beneath him. One of them had 4 legs and carried a heavy shell on its back, moving slowly. The other had a slender figure that was scarlet red and burned with flames as it reared its head and howled. The primordial divine turtle. The primordial soaring serpent. The two divine behemoths fused together rapidly, and the turtle and snake intertwined, forming an even more terrifying existence. With 2 heads, it surpassed history and was unstoppable. Stepping on the turtle and snake, Su Zemo's body floated indeterminately in the sea of hatred. However, he did not sink no matter what. No matter how Tao Lord Hatred channeled it, no matter how much of a stir the sea of hatred created, it would be suppressed rapidly by the turtle and snake. Carrying Su Zemo, the turtle and snake swam against the current and charged towards Tao Lord Hatred. Suddenly, Su Zemo closed 2 fingers and conjured a sword art. Instantly, stars filled the skies above the firmaments, and their trajectories turned chaotic, as though they were agitated. When the heaven's killing intent is released, the stars are shifted out of alignment. Chi! Su Zemo extended his sword finger and slashed forward. A white sword chi surged out from his fingertip with an endless sharpness and a shuddering killing intent, slashing towards Tao Lord Hatred. The entire void seemed to have been sliced into two by that strike. It was not over yet. Chi, chi, chi. After slashing out once again, Suzimo released another burst and waved his sword fingers continuously, releasing 10 heaven-slaying sword chi in one go. Back in Dragon Tiger Sect, Suzimo killed a mighty figure of Dragon Tiger Sect with 3 consecutive slashes. Right now, the burst of the 10 heaven-slaying sword chi was enough to destroy gods and fiends. Tao Lord Hatred's heart skipped a beat. Although he could not recognize the origin of the heaven-slaying sword chi, he could sense how terrifying those 10 sword chi were. With no time to think, he gripped his saber with both hands and released an endless hatred as though he was one with the Fiend's saber. He hated the heavens, the earth, all living beings, and everything in the world. Endless hatred. Tao Lord Hatred released the most terrifying saber technique of the Hatred Sutra, and endless hatred descended. That was the saber intent of hatred. The power of intent was comparable to top-grade Dharmic arts. The saber danced, and endless hatred turned into streams of fiend chi that charged towards the 10 incoming sword chi. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing echoed in an ear-piercing manner. In the blink of an eye, the 10 heaven-slaying sword chi were blocked by Tao Lord Hatred's saber technique. This was the first time that Suzimo had seen a cultivator of the same cultivation realm defend against 10 heaven-slaying sword chi unscathed. It was only at that moment that Tao Lord Hatred displayed his skills as the #1 saber of the Fiend sex. What was even more terrifying was that Tao Lord Hatred's saber techniques were completely unleashed. They shrouded towards Suzimo endlessly, intensifying with increasing horror. The hatred was endless. The dominance of the saber technique absorbed all the spirit chi and Dharmic powers in the void, turning them into the hateful fiend chi in his body and fusing them into the saber technique. One would never be able to break free eternally if they were drawn in by that saber technique. Beneath that boundless hatred was a bottomless abyss. Suzimo soared into the air and took a deep breath, chanting Sanskrit. Om, Ma, and I, Pa. At the same time, Suzimo conjured Dharmic seals of the Buddhist monasteries, and all 4 of them descended without holding back. He did not stop there. Endless hatred was so terrifying that it could not be stopped with the 4 Dharmic seals of the Buddhist monasteries alone. Suzimo required an even stronger burst power. See Burial's secret skill. Apocalyptic Fiend Fist. Mighty Heavenly Dragon Transcendence. Sandstorm. Great Sanskrit Light Fist. Avicii. More than 30 terrifying Dharmic arts and secret skills were released by Suzimo in the blink of an eye. All Dharmic arts were combined and heaven and earth shook. Chapter 1247, 90 Feet, Supreme. Chapter 1247, 90 Feet, Supreme. More than 30 Dharmic arts descended, and the entire bamboo forest was destroyed instantly. All the bamboo turned into dust and dissipated under the terrifying Dharmic arts. How scary! Chin Pianran, who was watching at the side, could not help but exclaim. She was from a super sect like Sword Sect, and had seen all sorts of paragons and monster incarnates. The previous Dharma characteristic rankings #1 Tao Lord Immortal Sword was her senior brother. However, even Tao Lord Immortal Sword would not be able to produce such a ferocious and terrifying attack. Those were more than 30 top-grade Dharmic arts. Humans were not limitless, and it was rare for most cultivators to be able to comprehend 1 or 2 top-tier cultivation techniques. They would already be at their limits if they could comprehend 3 or 4. A scene like Suzimo, where he released more than 30 Dharmic arts instantly, was absolutely unprecedented and shocking. Yin Beichen could not help but nod as well. To think that Zimo would be able to transform to such a realm in more than 10 years. More than 10 years ago in 100 Refinement Sect, Suzimo was only at the Void Reversion realm. Tao Lord Hatred felt the pressure as well, and suddenly howled into the skies. His howl was sorrowful and tragic, causing one's heart to flutter uncontrollably. A sound domain attack. Given Su Zimo's Green Lotus true body, there were few sound domain attacks that could stir his mind. However, he frowned the moment the roar was released. This sound domain attack was not only affecting his eardrums, but also his mind and even his essence spirit. The Hatred Sutra was truly terrifying. Kill. Not daring to be careless, Su Zimo released Thunderclap, Kill to defend as well. Bang. Boom. Boom. His voice was like rumbling thunder, filled with a vast and righteous power that suppressed evil and descended. Even so, he could not suppress Tao Lord hatred. After that sorrowful howl, an endless hatred surged into Tao Lord hatred's body, and it was instantly pushed to its limits. The entire process resembled a person who encountered great changes, going from pain, despair, and hatred. Endless hatred burst forth and swirled around the Fiend's saber, forming a gigantic pitch-black saber beam that slashed down at the 30-odd Dharmic arts. Boom! More than 30 top-grade Dharmic arts collided with the pitch-black saber beam and let out a deafening bang, causing the entire world to tremble. A blinding light burst forth from the point of collision. A massive energy fluctuation formed a semicircular barrier that extended in all directions, severing countless towering ancient trees in the forest instantly. Mud surged and dust billowed, as though the apocalypse had arrived. Countless fiend demons in the forest fled in fright from this place. Tao Lord Hatred did not retreat at all. He managed to defend against more than 30 Dharmic arts released by Su Zimo. The Hatred Sutra was way too strong. The 30-odd inheritances he received were left behind by ancient mighty figures, or even half-martial ancestors. However, they were still far inferior compared to the Hatred Sutra. After all, these ancient mighty figures and half-martial ancestors did not even manage to advance to the Mahayana realm. However, Fiend Emperor Hatred was an emperor of the ancient era. The gap between them was obvious. Of course, Tao Lord Hatred was not the true Fiend Emperor Hatred. Although more than 30 Dharmic arts were released at the same time and Tao Lord Hatred was not suppressed, it was impossible for him to gain the upper hand. The two of them were in a stalemate and channeled their Dharmic powers continuously without relenting. The aura between them was rising rapidly. Finally, the Dharmic powers within their bodies reached a critical point. Neither of them could withstand the pressure. Boom. Boom. Almost at the same time, a gigantic phantom burst forth from their bodies and rose rapidly, towering and emitting a terrifying aura. Both of them used their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics at the same time. 10 feet, 30 feet, 80 feet, 85 feet. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo's Rulai Dharmic body had already reached a height of 85 feet. As for Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, it did not stop at 85 feet and rose to 90 feet before long. A 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic. Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran were shocked. Nobody had seen Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic before, and nobody knew how high it was. But now, that heaven and earth Dharma characteristic had finally descended. Throughout history, time had passed, and there were many paragons and monster incarnates who could condense 88 or 89 feet heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. However, there were few who could condense supreme Dharma characteristics. For the past 10,000 years, Extreme Fire was the only one. But now, there was another person, Tao Lord Hatred. Even among 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristics, their combat strengths were different. At the very least, Yen Beichen could sense that the heaven and earth Dharma characteristic conjured by Tao Lord Hatred was slightly stronger than Extreme Fire's Scarlet Flame Dharmic body. Tao Lord Hatred's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was extremely strange. He wore a black robe, but his hair was white. Furthermore, his back was facing Su Zimo, and he wielded a pitch-black saber. The back of the Dharma characteristic looked lonely and exuded a tragic aura. However, that single back view caused the Rulai Dharmic body to tremble. A 85 feet heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was already strong enough to sweep through anyone of the same cultivation realm. However, The difference was way too great against a 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic. In the Battle of 100 Refinement Sect, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's 89 feet Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was defeated by Extreme Fire's Scarlet Flame Dharmic body. As for Su Zimo's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic, it was only 85 feet tall. Qin Pianran looked worried. She could clearly feel Yin Beichen's grip on her palm tighten as cold sweat poured down. Pianran, the situation isn't too good. Suddenly, Yin Beichen said, "Leave first. I've got to assist Zimo later." "Beichen, your essence spirit is injured and you can't attack." Qin Pianran said hurriedly, "Furthermore, I heard that fellow Taoist Su cultivated 2 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics. There might be a chance for things to change." 2 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics won't do either. The difference between a 85 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic and a Supreme Dharma characteristic is too great. Yin Beichen shook his head with a grim expression. Boom! Another loud bang sounded from Su Zimo's body. Another phantom soared into the skies. The second Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic, the 85 feet Heavenly Fiend Dharma body. There was no way the Rulai Dharmic body could defend against the pressure of a Supreme Dharma characteristic. It had already lost before it even attacked. The Rulai Dharmic body and Heavenly Fiend Dharma body stood side by side behind Su Zimo, emitting powerful auras that clashed against Tao Lord Hatred's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic. "Fufu, you've finally released your second Dharma characteristic." Tao Lord Hatred laughed. "I've long heard that after Desolate Marshal entered the Dharma characteristic realm, he conjured 2 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics that are unprecedented. The entire cultivation world has praised you to the skies. Today, I'll let you know something. In front of a Supreme Dharma characteristic, your 85 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics are nothing." Tao Lord Hatred's heart stirred. The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic that was initially standing behind him suddenly turned around. Su Zimo exchanged glances with the Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic and could not help but shudder as his Tao heart nearly collapsed. Chapter 1248, 3 Dharma Characteristics. Chapter 1248, 3 Dharma Characteristics. Those bloodshot eyes were filled with sadness, pain, despair, hatred, and devastation, as well as various negative emotions. It was as though the bloodshot eyes were bottomless abysses. Su Zimo merely exchanged a single glance and was nearly devoured by the abyss. The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was the union of all Dharmic arts and was the epitome of Dharmic arts. It was lifeless and could not contain any emotions. However, Tao Lord Hatred's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was different. Just by standing there, the Dharma characteristic was like an abyss with endless hatred that could devour and destroy everything. Meeting those eyes, Su Zimo suddenly recalled the legend of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. Legend has it that Fiend Emperor Hatred hated himself to the core and committed suicide. Su Zimo could not imagine what sort of hatred would push someone to kill themselves. However, when he saw those eyes, Su Zimo suddenly understood. There was no hope in those eyes. Surviving was a form of torture for Fiend Emperor Hatred. Boom! As Su Zimo pondered, Tao Lord Hatred willed the Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic behind him to head over. With a single step, it crossed endless space and arrived before Su Zimo instantly. The massive body that was 90 feet tall emitted a torrential hatred. It was much taller than the Rulai Dharmic body and Heavenly Fiend Dharma body, suppressing the auras of Su Zimo's 2 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics completely. Swoosh! Raising the saber in its hands, the Hatred Dharmic body slashed down viciously at Su Zimo's head. The Heavenly Fiend Dharma body swung its scythe and defended against the Fiend's saber as well. Clang! Sparks flew as the 2 sabers collided. The Hatred Dharmic body did not move at all, and there was no fluctuation in its eyes. As for the Heavenly Fiend Dharma body, its body shuddered and Dharmic powers surged. The Dharma characteristic was nearly cleaved into 2 by a single slash from the Hatred Dharmic body. A 85 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic could even fight against conjoint body mighty figures. With that heavenly fiend Dharma body, Suzimo was invincible in Dragon Tiger sect and nobody could defend against his attacks. Even mighty figures had to bow down to him. However, in the face of the hatred Dharmic body, the difference between them was too great. The difference between 85 and 90 feet was merely 5 feet. However, that difference was like heaven and earth. If it was any other cultivator's 85 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, they would not even be able to withstand a single slash from the hatred Dharmic body. The reason why the heavenly fiend Dharma body could defend against it was because the foundation of the Dharmic body originated from the Tao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra. It was infused with many cultivation techniques of the Fiend Tao and was extremely mysterious. This heavenly fiend Dharma body was a product of the greater mastery of the Fiend Tao. Boom! The Rulai Dharmic body moved as well and extended a golden shimmering palm that blanketed the skies, crushing down on the hatred Dharmic body. Without even looking, the hatred Dharmic body punched in reverse into the Rulai Dharmic body's palm. Bang! The fist and palm collided. The Rulai Dharmic body shuddered and took half a step back as well. Ha 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 ha! Tao Lord Hatred laughed with a smug expression. Desolate Marshal, if you continue cultivating and cultivate those two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics to a height of 89 feet or 90 feet, you might be able to fight me. Unfortunately, you no longer have a chance. I'll take your life today. As Tao Lord Hatred hollered, the hatred on the hatred Dharmic body intensified and it let out a tragic roar, sinking into endless despair. The fiend's saber in his hands rose and descended once more. Ooh, ooh. The saber tore through the air and let out a series of shuddering wails. That slash enveloped the Rulai Dharmic body and heavenly fiend Dharma body. Suzimo's expression turned grim. One could only truly sense the terror of a supreme Dharma characteristic after clashing with a 90 feet Dharma characteristic. 9 was an extreme number. 90 feet was the mark of a supreme. Those were not empty words. Boom! Under that immense pressure, Suzimo no longer had any reservations and another phantom burst forth from his body with a loud bang. A third heaven and earth Dharma characteristic descended. The heaven and earth Dharma characteristic stood on dark clouds and shone with endless lightning. It was domineering and looked down on the world, wielding a whip made from millions of lightning with a torrential aura. It resembled an ancient thunder god that controlled the world. The thunder Dharmic body had descended. The thunder Dharmic body was formed with the Great Void Spirit Refinement section as the foundation and many secret skills of the immortal Tao. It rose rapidly to a height of 85 feet. There were now 3 85 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. A deep hint of fear flashed through Tao Lord Hatred's eyes. It was thankful that Tao Lord Desolate Marshal was only at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm. If the latter were to cultivate to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, even his supreme Dharma characteristic would not be able to deal with the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. But now, 3 85 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were still not enough to threaten his hatred Dharmic body. Crackle! Thunderbolt danced in the whip that tore through the air and wrapped around the wrist of the hatred Dharmic body right away. Massive power of thunder surged into the hatred Dharmic body through the whip. The power of thunder was the most effective against evil. In the blink of an eye, even the fiend chi of the hatred Dharmic body was suppressed. However, right after, the blood color in the eyes of the hatred Dharmic body intensified and its heart surged with rage. Rumbling hatred and fiend chi gushed out, and it broke free of the shackles of the thunder whip. Bang! 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 The hatred Dharmic body slashed thrice in succession. The thunder Dharmic body, Rulai Dharmic body, and heavenly fiend Dharma body defended against it head-on. However, their bodies shuddered and they retreated a few steps. They could not defend against it. Suzimo's expression finally changed. Even the 385 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics could not defend against the power of the supreme Dharma characteristic. He had not expected that he would encounter such a terrifying enemy in the middle continent. Bang, bang, bang. The hatred dermic body attacked continuously, and everywhere its saber passed, hatred and fiend chi would surge, overwhelming everything. Su Zimo's 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics retreated continuously. Desolate Marshal, you've lost. Tao Lord Hatred had a menacing expression and could not help but burst into laughter. Strongest monster incarnate in history? You're still going to be killed by me regardless. Zimo, run. Right then, Yin Beichen's voice sounded in Su Zimo's consciousness. Given your capabilities, you'll definitely be able to escape. Leave this place. Once you cultivate to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, you'll definitely be able to make a comeback and suppress hatred. Su Zimo remained silent. He had many trump cards. Although Tao Lord Hatred had the upper hand in this battle, the latter would definitely not be able to kill him if he wanted to escape. However, if he were to escape, Yin Beichen and Qin Pianran would definitely die here. How could Su Zimo subject Yin Beichen and Qin Pianran to death while he escaped on his own? As though he could read Su Zimo's mind, Yin Beichen sent another voice transmission. 2 deaths is better than 3. If you escape, you can still take revenge for us in the future. Su Zimo still did not reply. No matter what, he could not abandon Yin Beichen here and leave alone. Furthermore, he was Desolate Marshal. He was the invincible Tao Lord Desolate Marshal who looked down on history. Although it was only a Green Lotus True Body that did not represent his full combat strength, this Green Lotus True Body had also undergone a sediment transformation after 5,000 years of cultivation. He would definitely not admit defeat so easily. There must be another solution. Chapter 1249, Tao Heart Annihilation. Chapter 1249, Tao Heart Annihilation. Narrowing his gaze, Su Zimo looked at Tao Lord Hatred, who was not far away, trying his best to find a way to break out of the situation. At that moment, his 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were completely suppressed, and Tao Lord Hatred had an extremely smug expression. As for the hatred dermic body, it emitted torrential hatred. The emotions of Tao Lord Hatred and the hatred dermic body were rather out of place. A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. That was the weakness of Tao Lord Hatred. Mo-Ga. Su Zimo was still controlling the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics with all his might to deal with the hatred dermic body. At the same time, he chanted an abstruse sutra. The Sanskrit seemed to possess a mysterious power. However, Yin Beichen, Qin Pianran, and even Tao Lord Hatred were unaffected when they heard that Sanskrit chant. What are you rambling on about? Tao Lord Hatred sneered. Just as he was about to mock Su Zimo properly, his expression changed. Something was amiss. The connection between him and the hatred dermic body seemed to have fluctuated. Although they could not sense anything from the Sanskrit, the movement of the hatred dermic body was a tad slower, and its fiend chi became erratic as well. Before long, the sutra chant was completed. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he lowered his head like a gigantic Buddha. With a dignified expression, he conjured hand seals and chanted another sutra. Although that sutra was completely different from the one earlier on, it had an extremely obvious impact on the hatred dermic body. The scarlet light that was spewing from the eyes of the hatred dermic body dimmed significantly and even showed signs of disappearing. A lost expression appeared on the face of the hatred dermic body as well. Yin Beichen was delighted and whispered, "Zimo has found a way to counter the hatred dermic body." Qin Pianran was surprised and elated as well. It's truly hard to imagine that a 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic that is invincible would be affected by these simple incantations. Those incantations are probably far from simple. Every single word exuded an ancient aura that I've never seen from a cultivator of the Buddhist monasteries. They must have been lost for many years. Yin Beichen said in a deep voice. He was not wrong. Those were supreme secret incantations of the ancient Buddhist monasteries. The Great Light Mantra, the Auditory Release Mantra, the Sensory Enigma Mantra, the Six Paths Diamond Mantra. In the ancient war, countless lives in Tianhuang mainland were implicated. The disciples of the Buddhist monasteries recited the 4 secret incantations to purify the souls and appease their grievances. At that moment, the 4 secret incantations were meant to purify none other than the hatred dharmic body. The body of this heaven and earth Dharma characteristic contained endless hatred. If it was purified, Tao Lord hatred would be nothing to fear. By the time Su Zimo chanted the 2nd secret incantation, the actions of the hatred dharmic body had already slowed down. The thunder dharmic body, Rulai dharmic body, and heavenly fiend Dharma body finally managed to defend in the battle against the hatred dharmic body. Both sides were in a stalemate. By the time Su Zimo chanted the 3rd secret incantation, the effect on the hatred dharmic body was even greater and it became disadvantaged. In the ancient era, no cultivator of the Buddhist monasteries would dare to stand in the way of the fiend emperor hatred. Even the Buddha emperor who wielded the creation green lotus could not do anything to him and could only sigh. Tao Lord hatred said sternly, "Desolate marshal, you're dreaming if you think that you can suppress the hatred dharmic body with your useless incantations." Those were definitely not empty words. Back in the ancient era, if not for the self-destruction of the fiend emperor hatred, none of the emperors would have been able to kill the resplendent fiend emperor. The fiend chi on the body of the hatred dharmic body was showing signs of resurrection, and the blood glint in its eyes intensified. However, Su Zimo was unmoved. He looked at Tao Lord hatred and shook his head. "Unfortunately, you're not the fiend emperor hatred of the past. Although you've also cultivated the hatred sutra, you're still far inferior compared to the fiend emperor hatred. You didn't go through the same experiences of the fiend emperor hatred, so you will never be able to bear the same despair as him, nor will you ever be able to comprehend the true obscurities of the hatred sutra." Tao Lord hatred shuddered. Those words were way too powerful. They were targeted at Tao Lord hatred's Tao heart and his weakness. That was indeed an indeterminate fact. From Tao Lord hatred, Su Zimo could not sense the same sadness, despair, hatred, and devastation in the eyes of the hatred dharmic body. At the end of the day, Tao Lord hatred was someone that bore the 7 emotions and 6 desires. That was his weakness. Furthermore, there was no way to make up for that weakness. If Tao Lord hatred were to truly comprehend the essence of the hatred sutra, he would end up with the same fate as the fiend emperor hatred, suicide. This was a dead end. At that moment, Tao Lord hatred's face turned pale, and his Tao heart wavered for a moment. The hatred dharmic body was connected to him and was affected as well, losing more than half of its fiend chi. There was no way Su Zimo would let such an opportunity slip. A 4th secret incantation descended. The blood glint in the eyes of the hatred dharmic body vanished entirely. The hatred in his body had already calmed down. Without the support of that hatred, it was equivalent to losing the source of power. Under the combined attack of Su Zimo's 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, the hatred dharmic body was steadily defeated. In the blink of an eye, it was riddled with holes. Su Zimo's 4 secret incantations of the Buddhist monasteries were meant to purify the hatred dharmic body and release it from its attachments. In truth, the reason why the fiend emperor hatred committed suicide back then was also because he wanted to obtain release. Everything seemed to be fated from the unknowns. The whip of the thunder dharmic body, the hand seal of the Rulai dharmic body, and the scythe of the heavenly fiend dharmic body descended on the hatred dharmic body. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The 90 feet tall supreme Dharma characteristic dissipated instantly. Tao Lord hatred shuddered as though he was struck by lightning, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth with an indignant expression. He had not expected that his Tao heart would lose. Su Zimo lamented internally. If he was truly up against the fiend emperor hatred, his 4 secret incantations would not be able to suppress the hatred in the latter's heart. However, Tao Lord hatred was not the fiend emperor hatred. Su Zimo conjured hand seals that changed continuously. Suddenly, 3 balls of flames of different colors appeared beside him. The scarlet, golden, and black flames converged rapidly. A red light burst forth from Su Zimo's glabella, and the final essence spirit fire was injected, forming the Kacharati Dao fire that shot towards Dao Lord Hatred. Swoosh! The Kacharati Dao fire descended on Dao Lord Hatred. A torrential fiend chi surged out from Dao Lord Hatred's body, and his blood chi surged, resisting against the Kacharati Dao fire with a series of crackling sounds. Even with the searing of the Kacharati Dao fire, it did not manage to injure his bones and organs and merely burned his skin and hair to ashes. Dao Lord Hatred was simply way too strong even without the full comprehension of the Hatred Sutra. Although Dao Lord Hatred had already turned into a flaming man as he resisted the Kacharati Dao fire, he still let out a furious roar and charged towards Su Zimo with his Fiend Saber. Su Zimo willed. The Creation Lotus platform descended and smashed towards Dao Lord Hatred. Boom! Sparks flew as the Creation Lotus platform collided against the Fiend Saber. The Creation Lotus platform was repelled. It failed to stop Dao Lord Hatred in his tracks. Right then, the three Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics arrived at the same time and released a powerful attack. Chapter 1250, Death of a Monster Incarnate. Chapter 1250, Death of a Monster Incarnate. Piak. The whips of the thunder-dermic body struck Dao Lord Hatred heavily, causing his flesh to split open and his bones to be exposed. The Kacharati Dao fire engulfed the wound instantly, and it dried up before a single drop of blood could flow. Bang! The hand seal of the Rulai dermic body landed on Dao Lord Hatred's chest. The jarring sound of bones cracking could be heard. Dao Lord Hatred's chest caved in instantly, creating a huge pit. Many broken bones even pierced his lungs. Poof! Although Dao Lord Hatred managed to avoid taking damage to his vitals from the scythe of the heavenly fiend Dharma body, his abdomen was still pierced. The scythe yanked horizontally and almost sliced Dao Lord Hatred's body into two. Those three heavy injuries might not have been fatal for Dao Lord Hatred. However, Dao Lord Hatred's body still burned with the Kacharati Dao fire. Initially, his body and blood chi could hold out against the Kacharati Dao fire. Now that he was suddenly injured as such, the balance was broken instantly. The Kacharati Dao fire surged into his body quickly and burned his bones, organs, blood chi, and life force. Even conjoint body mighty figures would not be able to survive if the Kacharati Dao fire burned their bones and organs. At that moment, Su Zimo's three Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics were filled with injuries and riddled with holes. Unable to hold on any longer, they dissipated rapidly. This battle was way more tragic than Su Zimo had imagined. If not for the 5,000 years of accumulation in the Dao inheritance ground, he would definitely not have won this battle. There were many signs that indicated that a golden era had arrived in Tianhuang mainland. Paragons were rampant and monster incarnates rose everywhere. Existences such as Diin and Dao Lord Hatred would continue to appear one after another in the future. This was a great era that was not weaker than the ancient era. Of course, with so many paragons and monster incarnates, it also meant that a huge change was about to happen in Tianhuang mainland. If one's combat strength was insufficient, they would be reduced to ants and crushed to death under such a change. Thump! Finally, Dao Lord Hatred could not hold on any longer. Leaning on his Fiend Saber, he half-knelt on the ground and glared at Su Zimo fiercely through the layers of flames. Dao Lord Hatred's vitality was way too exuberant. Even though he was severely injured and his organs were burned to ashes by the Kacharati Dao fire, he was not dead and had persisted till now. Given Dao Lord Hatred's combat strength, Su Zimo would not be able to stop him if he wanted to escape. Unfortunately, cracks had appeared in his Dao heart. Even if he managed to escape, it would be difficult for his cultivation to advance in the future. This was a blow that was worse than death for him. Dao Lord Hatred's blood chi dried up, and his life force drained rapidly. Finally, he shifted his gaze from Su Zimo to Yin Beichen and smiled. By now, he was already unrecognizable after being burned by the Kacharati Dao fire. That smile looked extremely menacing in the blazing flames. Yin Beichen, do you really think that you can escape from the cultivation world cleanly? Tao Lord Hatred's voice sounded. You are the Asura and your hands were once stained with blood. It's impossible for you to lead a peaceful life. If I, Li Hong, can find you today, someone else will do so tomorrow. You will never be able to leave the cultivation world or dream about living in peace. You wish to backtrack after stepping onto the path of the Asura? To think that the Asura would be reduced to such a state for a woman from an immortal sect. What a joke. What an incredible joke. Ha 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 ha. Tao Lord Hatred let out a shuddering laughter. Asura, you'll be killed by this woman sooner or later. I'm merely making a move first, but you'll be joining me down below real soon. I didn't lose. Tao Lord Hatred's obsession was still with Yin Beichen. Up till his death, he was still thinking about his previous failure and wanted to fight Yin Beichen to see who was stronger. However, he still went silent in the end. The ball of flames intensified and engulfed his body completely, burning it continuously. After a full half-hour, the Kacharati Dao fire gradually extinguished. Tao Lord Hatred was already burned to a crisp, leaving only a pitch-black Fiend Saber stabbed into the ground with a storage bag beside it. Qin Pianran stared blankly at the place where Tao Lord Hatred died, deep in her thoughts and dejected. Sensing her abnormality, Yin Beichen's heart skipped a beat and he understood. Qin Pianran was a woman after all, and Tao Lord Hatred's final words triggered her. Yin Beichen extended his palm and gripped Qin Pianran gently, comforting her. Pianran, Li Hin was merely spouting nonsense because he knew he was going to die. There's no need to take his words to heart. The world is huge. I don't believe there's nowhere for just the two of us. Who will remember us after a long time? Yin Beichen's words did not eliminate Qin Pianran's worries. She was a little lost. But I really caused you harm. You ended up in this state because you wanted to save me. She felt guilty, remorseful and worried. Yin Beichen smiled. Pianran, don't think too much. It's just an essence spirit injury and there's no danger to my life. Furthermore, you weren't the one who injured my essence spirit. How can I blame you? Pausing for a moment, he asked jokingly, or, are you thinking of leaving me because my essence spirit's injured? No. Qin Pianran blushed and her expression softened. Even if you want to leave, I won't let go. Yin Beichen gripped Qin Pianran's palm tightly and said softly. However, his tone was unusually firm. On the other side, Su Zimo advanced and arrived beside the Fiend Saber, glaring at it for a moment. The Fiend Saber had gone completely silent without any luster. It looked like a pitch-black, useless saber, unlike its previous torrential might. If it was anyone else, they would not have imagined that the pitch-black saber could have released such a terrifying power. Su Zimo did not touch the Fiend Saber. Instead, he looked at the storage bag at the side. As the number one saber of the Fiend sects, Tao Lord Hatred definitely had many treasures in his storage bag. Among them, the most valuable was definitely the Hatred Sutra. Su Zimo went forward and opened his storage bag, scanning it carefully with his spirit consciousness. A look of disappointment flashed through his eyes. There were indeed many treasures in that storage bag. There were elixirs, dermic weapons, secret skills, and universal treasures. Unfortunately, the Hatred Sutra was not there. Su Zimo did not use the soul-searching art. Firstly, the battle was intense earlier on, and he was almost suppressed by Tao Lord Hatred's Dharma characteristic. How would he have the chance to release the soul-searching art? Secondly, in order for a chance to succeed, Su Zimo had to target those with lesser cultivation and combat strength compared to him. Notwithstanding the fact that Su Zimo might have failed in using the soul-searching art against Tao Lord Hatred, he might have suffered a backlash and injured his essence spirit instead. Chapter 1251, Saber Burial. Chapter 1251, Saber Burial. Putting away the storage bag, Su Zimo's gaze shifted to the Hatred Fiend Saber not far away. The moment he saw the Fiend Saber, he could sense how terrifying it was. Even his creation Lotus platform could barely deal with the saber. In a prolonged fight, The Creation Lotus platform would inevitably succumb to the Fiend Saber the same way as the mystic Magnet Mountain. Reaching out, Su Zimo gripped the handle of the Hatred Fiend Saber, wanting to pull it out and observe it carefully. However, the moment his palm touched the handle of the Fiend Saber, he felt a tremendous amount of negative emotions surge into his consciousness through his fingertip, affecting his essence spirit. At the same time, he felt a sharp pain on his palm and retracted it instinctively. Lowering his head, his pupils constricted and he frowned. His palm was bleeding. Although the blood chi of this green lotus true body was not strong, its body and skin were indestructible and could fight against Khanate Downlord Dermic weapons. However, just now, he merely touched the handle of the Hatred Fiend Saber, and his palm was injured by the power of the saber. If the blade of that Fiend Saber was used on him, it would probably slice the green lotus true body into two. The weapon of an ancient fiend emperor was truly extraordinary. The Hatred Fiend Saber was an emperor weapon to begin with. However, up till now, there were not many people who could truly use the power of that Fiend Saber. Interesting, Su Zimo muttered softly. To think that the Hatred Fiend Saber would reject him so much. He did not know if it was because he possessed the inheritance of the immortal and Buddhist Daos or some other reason. Although he did not manage to find the Hatred Sutra, this Hatred Fiend Saber was also an utmost treasure. While he could not wield the Hatred Fiend Saber right now, as his cultivation advanced, there was a chance for him to become the owner of this Fiend Saber in the future. At that thought, Su Zimo channeled his dermic powers and stuffed the Hatred Fiend Saber into his storage bag, prepared to advance to the conjoint body realm before he attempted it again. Thereafter, he headed towards Yin Beichin and Qin Pian Ran. After taking a few steps, Su Zimo's expression changed. His palm slapped his storage bag swiftly and pulled out the Hatred Fiend Saber instantly, tossing it on the ground with a bewildered expression. At that moment, wisps of pitch-black fiend chi surrounded the Hatred Fiend Saber, as though they could devour all living beings in the world. As Su Zimo tossed the Hatred Fiend Saber out, the fiend chi on the saber gradually calmed down and dimmed once more. What's wrong? Yin Beichin noticed Su Zimo's actions and asked with a frown. That saber is way too terrifying. Su Zimo recalled what he had sensed earlier on and said sternly, that fiend saber was in my storage bag and emitted a powerful fiend chi that corroded all the treasures in the vicinity. As he said that, Su Zimo took out a few Downlord Dermic weapons from his storage bag. Yin Beichin and Qin Pianran gasped when they saw that. Those Downlord Dermic weapons were all at perfect grade. However, in just a few breaths' time, the perfect grade Downlord Dermic weapons were tainted by the fiend chi and dimmed, completely destroyed. What a domineering fiend saber. He could not even place it in his storage bag. Unless Su Zimo was prepared to give up on all the treasures in his storage bag. This was the first time he had encountered such a troublesome weapon up till this point of his cultivation. In fact, he did not even dare to refine the Hatred Fiend Saber, afraid that his essence spirit would be devoured by it. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he suddenly said, Brother Yin, give it a try. You don't have the aura of the immortal or Buddhist cultivation techniques on you, and you specialize in the Fiend sect's Asura Dao. Perhaps you won't be rejected by this Hatred Fiend Saber. When Yin Beichin heard that, he came to the side of the Hatred Fiend Saber out of curiosity and attempted to grab its handle. There was no reaction from the Fiend Saber. Su Zimo nodded. True enough. Although he cultivated the immortal, Buddhist and Fiend Daos and was extremely strong such that he could suppress everyone of the same cultivation realm, his aura was mixed and was rejected by the Hatred Fiend Saber. However, nothing of the sort happened to Yin Beichin. Su Zimo smiled. Brother Yin, it seems like I'm not fated with this Hatred Fiend Saber. It's better for you to accept it. If it was in the past, Yin Beichin would definitely be delighted to obtain such a powerful fiend weapon. However, at that moment, he shook his head. My essence spirit is injured. Even if the Hatred Fiend Saber doesn't reject me, I can't refine it. Su Zimo said hurriedly, Don't worry, Brother Yin. I'll definitely think of a way to heal your injuries on your essence spirit. Once your essence spirit recovers, you can naturally refine the hatred fiend saber. Yin Beichen smiled. I've already decided to leave the cultivation world and not participate in any disputes. I'm even prepared to give up on my Asura saber that has been by my side for many years. There's no point in me keeping this hatred fiend saber. The fact that Yin Beichen said that meant that he had already made up his mind and would not change it. After pausing for a moment, he continued, furthermore, this hatred fiend saber is somewhat inauspicious. Neither of its two owners met with decent endings. That's right. This saber is truly troublesome to deal with. I can neither be carried nor touched. Su Zimo lamented. Yin Beichen pondered for a moment. This hatred fiend saber is inauspicious. If you don't want it, let's just bury it. All right. Su Zimo did not hesitate either. Although the hatred fiend saber was strong, it would only bring endless trouble for him. Su Zimo waved his sleeves and with immense dermic powers, dug an extremely deep bottomless pit in the ground. The pit was at least a few thousand feet deep, like an endless abyss. Su Zimo tossed the hatred fiend saber in. Turning into a black shadow, the hatred fiend saber disappeared into the abyss and was buried when Su Zimo filled the pit with mud once more. Brother Yin, what are your plans from now on? Su Zimo asked. Yin Beichen pondered for a moment. Zimo, I have to ask you for a favor. Big brother, feel free to speak your mind. There's no need for formalities. Su Zimo waved it off. Yin Beichen said, hatred is already dead. I'm sure it won't be long before the fiend sects know about it. This matter can't be hidden for sure. There were many powerful mighty figures in the fiend sections. Furthermore, if Downlord Hatred had a destiny symbol in the fiend sects, the moment it shattered, the fiend sects would know about it immediately. Yin Beichen continued, after you leave this place, can you spread a piece of news saying that I fought against hatred and died in battle with both parties defeated? That way, I can make use of this battle to fake my death and escape from the cultivation world completely. From now on, Yin Beichen will cease to exist in the cultivation world. Qin Pianran and Yin Beichen held hands and remained silent at the side. No matter what decision Yin Beichen made, she would support him. Su Zimo sighed internally. He was clear that Yin Beichen's plan was not merely to fake his own death and escape. It was also for Su Zimo. If Downlord Hatred was akin to the second Fiend Emperor Hatred, what sort of status did he hold within the Fiend sects? If the Fiend sects knew that Downlord Hatred died in his hands, all of them would definitely go into a frenzy to seek him out and kill him for revenge. On the surface, Yin Beichen's action was to fake his death. However, in reality, it was also to help Su Zimo with everything. Chapter 1252, Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Chapter 1252, Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Brother Yin, I know what you're thinking. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo said, however, it's still a little hasty. There are many loopholes if you were to say that you died in battle together with hatred. I'm afraid many people will be suspicious. It's just suspicions. Yin Beichen said, I don't have a destiny symbol in the sect. As long as I hide and don't be discovered, no one will remember me after a long time. After pausing for a moment, he pulled out the Asura Saber beside him and handed it to Su Zimo. This Asura Saber is Asura Sect's cornerstone dermic weapon. Think of a way to return this saber to Asura Sect. Yin Beichen had even given up on the Asura Saber that had followed him for many years. It was clear that he was determined to leave the cultivation world. Su Zimo pondered for a moment before saying, that's easy to deal with. I'll just sell the Asura Saber at an auction. Once the news is released, Asura Sect cultivators will naturally come forth to redeem it. All right, let's do that then. Yin Beichen said, it's inconvenient for me to show myself. I can only leave this matter to you. Su Zimo did not decline and merely asked, Brother Yin, are you really willing? Yin Beichen's gaze lingered on the Asura Saber for a long time. He gradually hid the nostalgia in his eyes and shook his head decisively. There's nothing to be reluctant about. I'm no longer the Asura and am not worthy of this saber. It's good for it to return as well. When Suzimo saw that Yin Beichen was decided, he did not persuade further and cupped his fists. I'll go settle this now and return in a few days. Suzimo bid farewell to Yin Beichen and turned to leave. After leaving the deep mountains, he sped the entire way and saw a cultivation city around 4 hours later. It was extremely lively within, and countless cultivators rode on their flying swords. Nascent souls and void reversions could be seen everywhere. A city of this level was already considered flourishing, and definitely had some large auction houses and marketplaces. Hesitating for a long time, Suzimo did not stop in the city and continued forward. This place was a little close to where Yin Beichen lived in seclusion. If the Asura Saber was traded in this city, it was hard to guarantee that no one would follow through on the search for him in the vicinity. The chances of Yin Beichen being exposed would be much greater. Suzimo continued forward and walked for a full day before arriving at another bustling ancient cultivation city. With a spin, he transformed into a burly man and descended. What happened next was much simpler. All he had to do was spread the news of the battle between Yin Beichen and Tao Lord Hatred. There was no need for any promotions for such explosive news. As long as it was released, it would create a storm that could spread through word of mouth and cause a huge uproar. This news was enough to shock the entire cultivation world. Did you hear about it? The #1 Saber of the Fiend sects, Tao Lord Hatred, returned. He sought out Yin Beichen once more to fight for the title of Asura Saber, and both of them ended up dying in battle. Isn't that right? That battle was rather tragic. It was said that mountains collapsed and rivers flowed in reverse. The sun and moon lost their colors and stars fell. I heard that Yin Beichen initially had the upper hand. In the end, Tao Lord Hatred went berserk and released his Essence Spirit secret skill. Their Essence Spirits clashed and neither of them managed to survive. Sigh. How tragic. In a restaurant in the ancient city, many cultivators were gathered together discussing this matter. They made it sound as though they had witnessed it personally. Many a time, that was the way the sayings were. As they spread, they changed their original appearances and became mere rumors. Suzimo sat by the window and sipped alone with an indifferent expression. Who knows if this battle was real or fake? Right then, a cultivator questioned. You don't know about that. The Asura Saber was sold at the Mystic Frost auction house a few days ago and was bought back by Asura sect. Immediately, a cultivator said, the Asura Saber belongs to the Asura. If he's not dead, why would he let this saber fall into the hands of outsiders? Did you see who sold that saber? I'm not sure. He seems to be a burly man. I heard that it's a woman. Many cultivators began to guess. After selling the Asura Saber, Suzimo was worried that something might happen and stayed in the ancient city for a few days. For the past few days, there were only various sayings and nothing unexpected happened. Suzimo threw down a few pieces of spirit stones casually and prepared to leave. He wanted to return to the depths of the mountains to inform Yin Beichen. The moment he stood up, a cultivator not far away suddenly said, by the way, I heard that a cultivator has seen the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. For real? Where? In Jade Toad Ridge. The location of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple is unpredictable, and every time it appears, countless cultivators will head in to investigate. To think that it would come to the Middle Continent. I heard that there are countless ancient treasures in that ancient temple as well as lost elixirs and cultivation techniques. The mention of that had Suzimo's heart skipping a beat. The 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir was one of the lost elixirs of the ancient era. That was an elixir that could treat Yin Beichen's essence spirit injuries. If this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple truly existed, there was a chance that the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir could be found within. However, he had never heard of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. It was better to ask around properly. Fellow Taoists, may I ask what's the background of this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple? Suzimo came to the group of cultivators and asked with cupped fists, smiling. This time round, he came to this ancient city to deal with the Asura Saber. Worried that something might happen, he hid his identity and changed his appearance. Even his cultivation realm was hidden, and he looked ordinary. Who are you? A cultivator glanced askance at Suzimo and smacked his lips. Why? You want to take a look at the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple as well? A cultivator asked with a smile and mocking expression. That's my intention. Suzimo nodded. Ha 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 ha. The group of cultivators exchanged glances and burst into laughter, looking at Suzimo as though they were looking at an idiot. You really think you're strong enough to want to go to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple? Avoid Reversion sneered. Even I, Dao Being Qing Ming, don't dare to step foot into the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Who do you think you are? Suzimo's expression turned cold as he released his aura as a Dharma characteristic and asked coldly, Repeat that again? The moment he said that, the temperature of the entire restaurant dipped. Although nascent souls and void reversions could be seen everywhere in the ancient city, there were not many Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. Most of the cultivators were nascent souls, and there were only a few void reversions. All of them were stunned by Suzimo's Dharma characteristic aura on the spot with pale expressions. Dao Lord, please calm down. I only offended you because I didn't know your identity. Please spare my life, Dao Lord. The void reversion was so scared that sweat broke out on his forehead as he bowed repeatedly. The cultivators who burst into laughter earlier on did not dare to say anything either. If a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord wanted to kill them in a fit of anger, nobody could stop him. Chapter 1253, Righteousness. Chapter 1253, Righteousness. Right now, Suzimo was only revealing his Dharma characteristic aura. If he revealed his true appearance and name, those cultivators would be scared out of their wits and kneel on the ground with wobbly legs. One of the cultivators said hurriedly, We don't know the origin of this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple either. We only heard that it appeared for the first time in the South region more than 100 years ago. Thereafter, every once in a while, the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple would appear somewhere in Tianhuang mainland and attract countless cultivators who would travel for it. Suzimo was confused. That was indeed strange. Things such as ancient ruins and ancestral cave abodes were mostly fixed in a single location. This was the first time that Suzimo had heard of an ancient temple that shifted locations. I heard that when the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple descended in the South region, a cultivator entered by accident and obtained an extremely powerful ancient dermic weapon. It caused quite a stir, and many cultivators went to explore it. Pausing for a moment, the cultivator's eyes revealed a hint of fear. However, it's already not bad if one of the 10 cultivators that entered this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple could make it out alive. Suzimo frowned and asked, What are the realms of the cultivators that went to explore? The weakest are at the Dharma characteristic realm. I heard that there are even some conjoint body mighty figures. The cultivators at the side rushed to reply. Suzimo asked, Something happened to the conjoint body mighty figures that entered the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple as well? I heard that over the years, at least 100 conjoint body mighty figures have entered the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and have never come out ever since. A cultivator grinned with a wary expression. 100 conjoint body mighty figures. That was a huge figure. For example, Dragon Tiger sect, one of the upper sects, had less than 10 conjoint body mighty figures. From the looks of it, this Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was definitely an extremely dangerous place. Pondering for a moment, Suzimo asked again, Even so, there are still cultivators who want to explore it? That's right. A void reversion nodded. It's said that cultivators who can come out of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple alive will indeed benefit immensely. There are some lost ancient elixirs and top-tier cultivation techniques. I also heard that there was once a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord who was in his twilight years and entered the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. He obtained some sort of opportunity and managed to break through to the conjoint body realm. Will the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir be in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple? Suzimo asked again. Yes. A cultivator said hurriedly, I heard that a conjoint body mighty figure once came out alive and obtained the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir. Suzimo nodded and made up his mind. No matter how dangerous this grand Primordium ancient temple was, he had to give it a shot. Su Zimo was already decided and left the restaurant, preparing to bid farewell to Yin Beichun and head to the grand Primordium ancient temple. In the bamboo forest deep in the mountains. In the past few days, the traces left behind by the battle had been cleaned up. With the capabilities of Yin Beichun and Qin Pianran, they easily rebuilt a wooden house that sat there in a simple manner. What? You're going to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple? In the wooden house, Yin Beichun shook his head resolutely when he heard Su Zimo's plan. No, that's too dangerous. Big brother, you know about the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple? Su Zimo asked. I don't know much either. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple is extremely mysterious. Although it has only appeared for a short 100-odd years, countless conjoint body mighty figures have died in it over the years. You're only at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm. You must not go. Su Zimo shook his head without saying anything. It was clear that he had made up his mind. Yin Beichun said earnestly, Zimo, the descent of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple in the Middle Continent will definitely attract many paragons and monster incarnates. With so many powerful figures, as well as conjoint body mighty figures present, it's too dangerous for you to go alone. Su Zimo smiled. Back then, you merely heard that Tao Lord Immortal Sword and the others wanted to cause trouble for me at 100 Refinement Sect before you headed there alone and slaughtered 9 Tao Lords outside the sect single-handedly. Pausing for a moment, he said softly, you had just only entered the Dharma characteristic realm at that time as well. That scene was unforgettable for Su Zimo. How heroic was that? That was the righteousness of the Asura. Where righteousness lies, even if millions of people stand against it, it will not change. Although Yin Beichun was only at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm, he fought against Tao Lord Immortal Sword and other Tao Lords who had been famous for a long time without hesitation. Because of that, his essence spirit was injured and had yet to recover. Since there was a chance that there might be a 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo had to take it no matter what. Yin Beichun sighed gently and did not persuade further. They had different personalities and cultivated different saber techniques. However, all of them were loyal people. Yin Beichun pondered for a moment. I heard that the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple has just ascended, but there's a dharmic power barrier outside. Cultivators can only enter after the barrier is weakened after a period of time. Zimo, don't be in a hurry to go. Stay here and cultivate during this period of time. If you can advance to the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm, your Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic will strengthen. With 3 Dharma characteristics, your combat strength will definitely increase to a new level and you will be able to protect yourself. Yes? Su Zimo nodded. I've gained quite a bit from the battle with hatred. I'm just about to calm down and comprehend them properly. Zimo, I'll go with you when the time comes. Qin Pianran said, this matter concerns Beichun, and I can't let you take the risk alone. There's no need. Su Zimo declined with a smile. If I travel alone, I can't escape if there's any danger. However, if there's anyone else, I'll feel restricted instead. Furthermore, Big Brother is injured. Sister Qin, just stay here with him and await good news from me. Because of Yin Beichun, it would seem distant if they constantly referred to one another as fellow Taoists. As such, they changed the way they addressed one another. Qin Pianran was a little hesitant. Yin Beichun said, let Zimo go alone. I reckon that many paragons and monster incarnates of super sects will be attracted to this trip to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. You might attract trouble if you go. Qin Pianran nodded. She was a cultivator of Sword Sect. Now that she was with the notorious Asura of the Fiend sects, Sword Sect must have kicked her out of the sect a long time ago and regarded as a traitor of the immortal sects and disgrace of Sword Sect. If she encountered acquaintances from Sword Sect, there was a high chance that both parties would clash. At that thought, Qin Pianran gave up on that thought and stood up. She bowed deeply to Su Zimo and said sincerely, thank you, Zimo. Sister Qin, you're too kind. Su Zimo helped her up hurriedly. Qin Pianran smiled. I can't help much either. During this period of time, I'll make a few side dishes for you to try. At the side, Yin Beichen could not help but exclaim, Pianran's culinary skills are truly decent. I'll get to enjoy as well thanks to you. At their cultivation realm, they were already at the realm of Anidia. However, even immortals had the desire to eat, and it was unavoidable. For the next month, Su Zimo stayed in the bamboo forest and cultivated in silence. Finally, a month later, he sensed the opportunity for a breakthrough. Chapter 1254, Heavenly Secrets. Chapter 1254, Heavenly Secrets. From early-stage Dharma characteristic to mid-stage Dharma characteristic this time round, it took a mere 6 years. His cultivation speed was shockingly fast. The further one cultivated, the more time and energy they would require to break through a minor realm. Although it was only at the early stage to mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm, it was normal for some Dharma characteristic Tao Lords to spend hundreds or even thousands of years. Part of the reason why Su Zimo was able to break through to the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm in 6 years was because of his close to 5,000 years of accumulation in the Tao inheritance ground. On the other hand, it was also because of his battle with Tao Lord Hatred. This battle not only gave Su Zimo many insights, but also immense pressure. His 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were almost suppressed by the 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic. Under that pressure, the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics grew rapidly and became even more condensed. Everything happened naturally when he broke through to the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. As for his 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, they had already climbed to a height of 87 feet. This was the level of the number 1 of the previous Dharma characteristic rankings. Although Tao Lord Immortal Sword's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was 89 feet tall, it was only 85 feet tall when he first became the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Given Su Zimo's current combat strength, he could sweep through anyone of the same cultivation realm and suppress all Tao Lords. Even ordinary conjoint body mighty figures were not his match. Of course, if he encountered some paragons and monster incarnates of the conjoint body realm, especially those of super sects, it was unknown if Su Zimo could defeat them. However, one thing was certain. Even conjoint body mighty figures of super sects would not be able to attempt to kill him as they did in the past. With 387 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, Su Zimo could carve out a path even if he was surrounded by conjoint body mighty figures. Of course, the danger of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple did not merely come from other cultivators. The mysterious Ancient Temple was a dangerous place to begin with. Nobody knew what dangers lurked within. The cultivators that survived did not encounter any danger. However, nobody knew what the cultivators who met with danger saw. That was because they had already died within. This day, after Su Zimo broke through to the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm, he bid farewell to Yin Beichen and was prepared to head to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Zimo, you must be careful. If the situation doesn't look good, don't force yourself and retreat in time. Yin Beichen reminded, after all, my essence spirit is only injured. Nothing must happen to you. Don't worry. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. I still want to drink with you after I'm back. All right, I'll wait for you. Yin Beichen laughed as well. Thereafter, Su Zimo leaped up and auspicious clouds floated beneath his feet. He sped into the distance and disappeared before long. Sword Sect, Immortal Sword Tao Residence. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was sitting in his Tao residence with Tao Lord Cloud Rain beside him. Both of them had once escaped from Yin Beichen's hands, and after that calamity, their relationship became even closer and they met frequently. You mean to say that Hatred and the Asura died in battle? Tao Lord Immortal Sword frowned slightly and asked when he heard the news from Tao Lord Cloud Rain. Tao Lord Cloud Rain nodded. That's the rumor outside. There were many mixed, different sayings about the exact circumstances, but none of the cultivators saw it personally. That's impossible. Tao Lord Immortal Sword shook his head. Tao Lord Cloud Rain asked, why do you say that? Tao Lord Immortal Sword harumphed. That saying can deceive others, but how can it deceive us? You and I fought against the Asura before. Although we were defeated, he did not get off well either. His essence spirit must have been injured. Although injuries to the essence spirit are difficult to heal, it's not impossible. I heard that the Elixir Yang sect elder gave the Asura a 9-revolution soul return elixir, Tao Lord Cloud Rain said indifferently. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said, even if the Asura's essence spirit is fine, only 20 years have passed. His cultivation is at most at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. As for hatred, he's at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Ever since he reappeared, he hasn't even used his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic and has already suppressed a titular disciple of the Fiend sections. No matter how strong the Asura is, how can he leap realms and die in battle with hatred? You mean to say that hatred killed the Asura? Tao Lord Cloud Rain asked. It's hard to tell. There's definitely something fishy about this. Tao Lord Immortal Sword shook his head. Pausing for a moment, Tao Lord Cloud Rain seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked, right? Have you found that childhood sweetheart junior sister of yours yet? At the mention of that, Tao Lord Immortal Sword's eyes flashed with a dark glint. Not yet, Tao Lord Cloud Rain said with a fake smile. I heard that your junior sister was captured by the Asura previously. She's probably dead by now. No, Tao Lord Immortal Sword said coldly. Qin Pianran's destiny symbol was in Sword Sect and was intact. It was clear that she was not dead. Oh, Tao Lord Cloud Rain laughed. That's interesting. She was captured by the Asura who achieved his Tao through killing but did not die or return. He's a single man and she's a single woman. Tao Lord Immortal Sword's expression darkened completely as he said coldly, if that slut truly has an affair with the Asura of the Fiend sex, she'll be the shame of our Sword sect. If I find her, I'll definitely kill her personally. At that moment, Tao Lord Immortal Sword had completely forgotten that the slut he was referring to had saved his life. The world is vast. Who can find her if she truly wishes to hide? Tao Lord Cloud Rain shrugged his shoulders. Not necessarily, Tao Lord Immortal Sword said proudly. The successor of a certain place understands heaven and earth. He's able to peer into mysteries and divine everything in this world. Enigma Palace? Tao Lord Cloud Rain narrowed his eyes. Right then, a cultivator with fluttering robes strode over from outside the Tao Talisman door. He was handsome and wore a Confucian crown, holding a folding fan with a faint smile on his face. Tao Lord Cloud Rain's spirit consciousness scanned the person. He could not see through this cultivator's cultivation realm. Tao Lord Immortal Sword stood up to welcome him and revealed a smile as he shouted, Fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets, you've come from a long distance. Please pardon me for not welcoming you from afar. It's fine. There's no need to stand on courtesy between us. Heavenly Secrets had a warm smile that made one feel like they were bathing in a spring breeze without any resistance. Tao Lord Immortal Sword introduced to Tao Lord Cloud Rain. This is fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets of Enigma Palace, and this is Cloud Rain Sex. Before Tao Lord Immortal Sword could finish, Tao Lord Heavenly Secrets smiled. 5,000 years ago, he was number 2 on the Dharma characteristic ranking and is now the titular disciple of Cloud Rain sect. Tao Lord Cloud Rain nodded to himself. He was certain that they had never met before. However, this Heavenly Secrets knew of his identity and background. He was indeed skilled. As the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking and a titular disciple of Sword Sect, Tao Lord Immortal Sword had a noble status, and it was not surprising for him to befriend cultivators of Enigma Palace. Tao Lord Immortal Sword said, Fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets, I'm not going to stand on courtesy with you. The reason why I invited you here this time round is because I want you to help me find someone. She was originally a cultivator of Sword Sect. Qin Pianran. Heavenly Secrets shook his head. I'm not at the level where I can find someone with just a single name. What if I have her destiny symbol? Tao Lord Immortal Sword asked with a narrowed gaze. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently. That will be easy then. Chapter 1255, Location of the Buddha Bead. Chapter 1255, Location of the Buddha Bead. To be able to divine the other party's location with a destiny symbol, his methods were truly unfathomable. There was naturally a reason why Enigma Palace was able to remain standing for so long as a supersect in Tianhuang mainland. Cultivators of Enigma Palace rarely participated in the fights between the various factions of the cultivation world, nor did they take part in events such as the Golden Core Phenomenon ranking or Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic ranking. However, no one dared to look down on the cultivators of Enigma Palace. Back in the Dao Inheritance Ground, the current titular disciple of Enigma Palace, Lin Xuanji, managed to rescue Su Zimo from the hands of Dian and survive for more than 10 days after being hunted down by the latter. It was clear how strong he was. Dao Lord Cloud Rain had met Lin Xuanji before. However, he felt that this heavenly secrets was even more mysterious and unfathomable than Lin Xuanji. He was also wary of this cultivator who was all-knowing, mysterious, and possessed strange methods, afraid that his background would be seen through. However, Dao Lord Cloud Rain was extremely scheming and praised with a smile on his face. "Fellow Taoist, you sure are capable. I'm impressed. These things are not worth mentioning." Heavenly Secrets still had a faint smile on his face. "I can't divine everybody. For example, given someone of your cultivation realm, fellow Taoist Cloud Rain, I won't be able to divine you even if I had your destiny symbol." He seemed to have seen through Dao Lord Cloud Rain's worries and said casually, "Heavenly Secrets continued. As for Qin Pian Ran, that immortal sword mentioned, it's slightly easier. However, given her cultivation realm, she might sense something. Right?" Suddenly, Dao Lord Immortal Sword asked, "Regarding the battle a few days ago where both the Asura and Hatred died, what do you think about it, fellow Taoist? If I'm not wrong, Hatred should be dead." Heavenly Secrets said indifferently, "As for the Asura, I can't divine it yet. I don't believe that the Asura can kill Hatred. He's not at that level yet. However, if it's not the Asura, who could have killed Hatred?" Dao Lord Immortal Sword frowned. Given the combat strength he displayed, even conjoint body mighty figures might not be able to kill him. Heavenly Secrets was silent as well. He was not at the realm of knowing everything yet. Dao Lord Immortal Sword pondered for a moment, and a name flashed through his mind. Narrowing his eyes, he murmured, "Could it be him?" "Who?" Dao Lord Cloud Rain could not help but ask. "Desolate Marshal?" Dao Lord Immortal Sword said slowly, "I heard that after Desolate Marshal entered the Dharma characteristic realm, he condensed 2 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics and destroyed Dragon Tiger Sect, causing the mighty figures of the North region to bow down and submit to him. His reputation has already reached its limits." "You mean to say that Desolate Marshal has arrived in the Middle Continent?" A cold glint flashed through Dao Lord Cloud Rain's eyes as well. Both of them hated Su Zimo to the core. Their clones that they had cultivated for many years were destroyed in Thousand Demon Valley. Thereafter, they were hunted by the Asura outside 100 Refinement Sect and almost lost their lives. It was also because of Su Zimo. Furthermore, the heaven-slaying sword art that Dao Lord Immortal Sword lusted for was snatched away by Su Zimo as well. This matter was like a thorn that had been stuck in his heart for many years. It shouldn't be Desolate Marshal. He's only at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm. 285 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics shouldn't be a threat. Heavenly Secret smiled gently. At the very least, given fellow Taoist Immortal Sword's current combat strength, your 89 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic is enough to suppress him. Yes? Dao Lord Immortal Sword nodded. However, given the lad's capabilities, I'm afraid I won't be able to stop him if he wishes to escape. His potential is too great and will ultimately be a problem for us. If we want to deal with Desolate Marshal, we'll have to seek your help at that time, fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets. No problem. Heavenly Secrets nodded. Dao Lord Cloud Rain looked at Heavenly Secrets and suddenly said, "I heard that this generation's titular disciple of Enigma Palace is rather close to Desolate Marshal." Heavenly Secrets' expression was unchanged as he maintained the smile on his face. "Lin Xuanji, Fufu. He's not enough to stop me if I want to deal with someone." Tao Lord Cloud Rain understood. It was clear that Xuanji and Heavenly Secrets were at odds. There's one more thing. Suddenly, Tao Lord Cloud Rain said, I heard that the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple has descended in the Middle Continent. Since the three of us are gathered, why don't we head over and explore? Given our capabilities, the three of us should be able to avoid any danger. Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Tao Lord Immortal Sword was tempted as well. It was said that the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple contained many treasures and secret skills. He had already cultivated to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. If he entered the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and obtained a few treasures and some opportunities, he would definitely be able to advance to the conjoint body realm immediately. I'd advise the two of you not to go. Heavenly Secrets had a smile on his face the entire time after he entered the cave abode. However, the smile on his face vanished the moment he heard the words Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Fellow Taoist, is there something you know? Tao Lord Immortal Sword's heart skipped a beat, and he could not help but ask. Heavenly Secrets merely shook his head, and a strange blood glint flashed through the depths of his eyes as he sneered. Those cultivators that gather there are merely the greedy ones. They will eventually end up paving the road for others to benefit. Jade Toad Ridge was originally an ordinary mountain forest in the Middle Continent. Ridges as such could be seen everywhere in the Middle Continent. However, in the past month, Jade Toad Ridge had turned lively with many cultivators from all over the place. Furthermore, as time passed by, the number of cultivators that arrived at Jade Toad Ridge increased. What was even more frightening was that the cultivation realms of these cultivators were extremely high. Even those standing outside were at the Void Reversion realm. Almost all the cultivators who dared to venture deep into Jade Toad Ridge were Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. In the depths of Jade Toad Ridge, there were even traces of conjoint body mighty figures. The reason why all those powerful cultivators were gathered was because of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple that had suddenly appeared in Tianhuang mainland more than 100 years ago. This day, Su Zimo arrived at Jade Toad Ridge. Many void reversions lingered around the outer perimeter of Jade Toad Ridge and did not dare to venture deep, discussing fervently, Have you heard? A great treasure has appeared in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple this time round. What? It's said to be a treasure from tens of thousands of years ago. They are 2 Buddha beads that were lost from the Mingwang prayer beads. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The Mingwang prayer beads had 6 Buddha beads that corresponded to different Buddhist dharmic seals and Daming mantra, respectively. Right now, Su Zimo had 4 Buddha beads on his left wrist, and 2 of them were lost. For the past tens of thousands of years, there had been no news of them. Those 2 Buddha beads contained the strongest 2 Daming dharmic seals. To think that the 2 Buddha beads would be in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Under normal circumstances, Su Zimo should be delighted when he heard the location of the Buddha beads. However, for some reason, he felt that something was amiss. It was normal for Buddha beads to be in an ancient temple. However, this ancient temple only appeared more than 100 years ago. How could Buddha beads that were lost for tens of thousands of years be inside? After pondering for a long time, Su Zimo still could not understand as he shook his head and entered Jade Toad Ridge. Be it the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir or the 2 Buddha beads, he had to enter the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple to check things out. Chapter 1256, Tao Lord Sunset Cloud. Chapter 1256, Tao Lord Sunset Cloud. Deeper inside, the number of Dharma characteristic Tao Lords gathered in Jade Toad Ridge increased and even exceeded 1,000. As Su Zimo advanced, he finally caught sight of the legendary Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Initially, he was confused. It was just an ancient temple. How large could it be such that it was worth exploring? It was unlikely that the ancient temple could accommodate the number of cultivators gathered here. However, a deep look of shock flashed through Su Zimo's eyes the moment he caught sight of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was way too huge. Or rather, This ancient temple could no longer be described simply as huge. Instead, it was majestic and extravagant, like a massive creature that had experienced the baptism of countless years that sat in the depths of a mountain. The capital of Great Zhou was grand enough to accommodate millions of people with ease. However, this grand Primordium ancient temple was dozens of times larger than the capital of Great Zhou. Su Zimo arrived at the outer perimeter of the grand Primordium ancient temple and stood in midair. Compared to the ancient temple, his body was like a speck of dust on the surface. It was no wonder why so many cultivators coveted the grand Primordium ancient temple. Even Su Zimo was shocked when he saw the grand Primordium ancient temple. He would not believe that there were no treasures within it. Su Zimo looked at the ancient temple and his vision blurred. The ancient temple seemed to have transformed into a bottomless abyss that wanted to devour everything. Suddenly, Su Zimo felt his heart race. His heart skipped a beat. This was an impulse and a warning from his spirit perception. It was definitely not a coincidence. Seems like the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple is truly a dangerous place. Su Zimo lamented internally and looked around with a grim expression. He was already on guard before entering the ancient temple. There are so many experts this time round. If a great treasure truly appears, it will definitely cause a bloodbath. That's for sure. I heard that more than 10 Dao Lords who were on the previous Dharma characteristic ranking are here. That's right. I heard that 2 Buddha beads have appeared and the second on the previous Dharma characteristic ranking, Monk Black Gold of Diamond Monastery, has arrived. Back when Monk Black Gold fought for the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking, he was only defeated by Dao Lord Immortal Sword. I wonder how high his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic has grown after 1,000 years. In my opinion, even Dharma characteristic Dao Lords have to step aside. At that time, the ancient temple will become a battlefield for conjoint body mighty figures. Many a time, opportunities are important. Even though conjoint body mighty figures are strong, they might not be able to obtain treasures. Many Dharma characteristic Dao Lords lingered around the vicinity of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Su Zimo could clearly see that there was a thin barrier of dharmic powers surrounding the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple that was weakening as time passed. Before long, the dharmic power barrier would not be able to stop the cultivators here. Su Zimo attracted quite a bit of attention when he arrived near the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. However, those cultivators merely swept their gazes at him and paid no more attention. Almost everyone in the cultivation world knew of Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. However, not many cultivators had seen him before. It was especially so for the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present. Most of them had been famous for a long time, while Su Zimo had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm and had yet to have the chance to interact with them. Furthermore, all the cultivators were focused on the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple right now, and Su Zimo's arrival did not cause much of a stir. Right then, more than 10 cultivators arrived not far away. They wore Chaos Essence Sect's robes and had powerful auras. They were Dharma characteristic Dao Lords of Chaos Essence Sect. The Dao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect in the lead rode on a rat that was as large as an elephant. It was filled with golden fur, and its eyes were small and keen. It bared its sharp teeth and was extremely ferocious. Su Zimo definitely had a deep feud with Chaos Essence Sect. To a certain extent, Chaos Essence Sect hated Su Zimo even more than Glass Palace and other sects. In this generation, Chaos Essence Sect originally gave birth to 2 monster incarnates, Yi Tianqing and Diyin. They were known as the Chaos Essence Twin Paragons and were the hope of Chaos Essence Sect's rise. Unfortunately, the 2 monster incarnates died in Su Zimo's hands one after another. That was a huge blow for Chaos Essence Sect. Later on, Chaos Essence Sect's half-martial ancestor pursued Su Zimo and even hunted him down to the Dragon Burial Valley where a conjoint body mighty figure died, shocking Tianhuang mainland. The hunt towards Su Zimo came to an end there. Chaos Essence Sect suffered immense losses and many deaths. More than 10 years later, Su Zimo reconstructed his Green Lotus true body and returned in a domineering manner. However, There were no more outstanding monster incarnates of Chaos Essence sect that rose in recent years. The fact that Su Zimo killed Dian and Yi Tiancheng was akin to severing Chaos Essence sect's fortune. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud of Chaos Essence sect is here. He was 11th of the previous Dharma characteristic realm. It's said that the demon beast beneath Dao Lord Sunset Cloud is a pure-blooded ferocious beast, the Gold Eater Rat. It specializes in devouring divine weapons to cultivate and is extremely violent. Furthermore, the Gold Eater Rat has an extremely keen sense of smell and can sniff out many metal-type treasures. Even the layers of barriers can't stop its sense of smell. I heard that the Gold Eater Rat doesn't even fancy ordinary treasures. Some cultivators pointed to the gigantic rat beneath Dao Lord Sunset Cloud and whispered. Right then, the Gold Eater Rat seemed to have sensed something and stuck its nose out repeatedly, sniffing wildly in the air. Finally, it turned around and looked towards Su Zimo. An obscure spirit consciousness fluctuation spread between the Gold Eater Rat and Dao Lord Sunset Cloud. Before long, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's gaze landed on Su Zimo. Su Zimo looked straight with a calm expression. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud smirked coldly and led the dozens of Dao Lords behind him towards Su Zimo. The Dharma characteristic Dao Lords gradually separated and stood in a seemingly casual manner. However, they surrounded Su Zimo vaguely. Look, something's happening over there. Some cultivators noticed this and exclaimed excitedly. The Gold Eater Rat must have discovered a treasure and Dao Lord Sunset Cloud wants to snatch it. That itinerant cultivator came alone, and he's only at the Dharma characteristic realm. If he truly is in possession of great treasures, who else is a better target to rob? Many cultivators watched coldly from the sidelines. Naturally, no one would stand up for Su Zimo for something as such. Furthermore, the other party was from a super sect like Chaos Essence sect. Right then, a cultivator in the crowd exclaimed softly, "That green-robed cultivator looks familiar. He seems to be the legendary Dao Lord Desolate Marshal." The words Dao Lord Desolate Marshal caused a huge stir. However, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud and the others did not hear the clamor around the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. That can't be. Dao Lord Desolate Marshal is far away in the North region. Why would he come all the way to the Middle Continent for the sake of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple? Green robes, black hair, refined features that match the appearance of the legendary Desolate Marshal. Not far away, a commotion broke out in the crowd. At that moment, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud rode on his Gold Eater Rat and had already arrived before Su Zimo, looking down at him. Chapter 1257. I'm Desolate Marshal. Chapter 1257. I'm Desolate Marshal. Handed over, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud came before Su Zimo and did not waste time talking to him. In fact, he could not even be bothered to ask for Su Zimo's name and sect. He had the confidence and strength. Firstly, the Dharma characteristic ranking encompassed almost all the strongest paragons and monster incarnates of Tianhuang mainland. As the 11th of the Dharma characteristic ranking, he had never seen this green-robed cultivator before. If someone couldn't even make it onto the Dharma characteristic ranking, the person was naturally not qualified to fight him. Secondly, he was backed by Chaos Essence sect. However, this green-robed cultivator did not have any emblem of any sect or faction on him. He was alone, and there was a high chance that he was an itinerant cultivator. If an itinerant cultivator had a treasure that could tempt the Gold Eater Rat, what did he have to fear? Su Zimo frowned slightly and asked, "Hand over what?" "You have a treasure of Chaos Essence sect with you." Dao Lord Sunset Cloud said coldly, "My demon beast can sense everything clearly. I'd advise you to hand it over obediently and perhaps you might be able to survive." Many cultivators watching sneered internally. This was clearly nonsense. Even if this green-robed cultivator had Chaos Essence sect's treasure, how could a beast differentiate it? Initially, Su Zimo was puzzled as to what treasure of his the beast set its sights on. The truly valuable treasures in his possession were the Creation Lotus Platform, Mystic Magnet Mountain, and Mingwang Prayer Beads. However, those 3 treasures were not made of any metal. Su Zimo quickly understood. It was the Green Lotus True Body. His Green Lotus True Body was made from the stem of the creation Green Lotus, and the leaves of the lotus were his skin. It was created by fusing many Incarnate Dharmic weapons. Dion's Chaos Essence Bell and Dragon Battling Truncheon. Dao Being Glass's Rainbow Glazed Pagoda. Dao Being Heavenly Dipper's Saber. Dao Being Zephyr Thunder's Zephyr Thunder Hammer. The Gold Eater Rat must have sensed the aura of those Incarnate Dharmic weapons. Even after all these years, Chaos Essence Sect is still so overbearing in its ways. Su Zimo said meaningfully. If one thought about it carefully, they would be able to tell that something was amiss. However, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud did not take Su Zimo seriously at all, and would naturally not think about what he was implying. He said proudly, Chaos Essence Sect has always been like this. I thought that your sect would be more restrained after the death of the Chaos Essence Twin Paragons. To think that you guys haven't improved at all. Su Zimo's expression turned cold. You must have a death wish. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud narrowed his eyes and suddenly turned murderous. The other Dao Lords of Chaos Essence Sect had ugly expressions as well. At that time, Dian and Yi Tianqing were extremely famous and were invincible among their peers. To think that they would be killed by Desolate Martial one after another, that was Chaos Essence Sect's scar. But now, the green-robed cultivator before them had actually torn the scar in front of so many cultivators. How could the Chaos Essence Sect cultivators not be enraged? Su Zimo said indifferently, It's best if you guys don't provoke me. I'm here today because of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, and I don't want to create unnecessary trouble. That was indeed what Su Zimo thought. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was filled with unknowns. He did not want to engage in a battle with others outside before entering the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and seeing anything. Of course, that was also his final warning. However, that warning enraged Dao Lord Sunset Cloud and the others completely. Who are you? How dare you threaten me? He slapped his storage bag and summoned a flying sword, piercing it towards Su Zimo. Turning into a streak of light, the flying sword burst forth with a bedazzling light at an extremely fast speed. Standing on the spot, Su Zimo did not move at all. In fact, he did not even summon his Dharmic weapon or dodge. However, his eyes burned brightly as he suddenly spoke and said 3 words. I'm Desolate, Marshal. Those words exploded in the crowd like thunder. Right after, just as the flying sword was about to pierce Su Zimo's glabella, he extended his fair palm and caught the incoming flying sword. The flying sword had 6 Dharmic patterns and was a Khanate Dao Lord Dharmic weapon. It was extremely sharp and could slice metal like mud. Even supreme-grade Dao Lord Dharmic weapons could be severed by a single slash, let alone flesh and blood. However, under countless gazes, the Khanate Dao Lord Dharmic weapon was gripped tightly by Su Zimo's palm and could not move at all. The most terrifying thing was that there was no blood on Su Zimo's palm. In other words, the Khanate Dao Lord Dharmic weapon did not even manage to pierce Su Zimo's skin. He received a Khanate Dao Lord Dharmic weapon with his body but was completely fine. How was that possible? The crowd fell into an uproar. What shocked many cultivators even more was the words, I'm Desolate, Marshal. There was nothing more shocking than those words. Although there were countless Dao titles in Tianhuang mainland, there was only a single person who dared to use the Dao title Desolate Marshal. Dao Lord Desolate Marshal had arrived in the Middle Continent. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud was stunned as well. He had calculated everything and could even imagine how Su Zimo should react. He was even prepared for many follow-up attacks. However, this was the only thing he did not predict. I'm Desolate, Marshal. Those words caused a boom in his mind, and he was momentarily dazed. Not only do I dare to threaten you, I even dare to kill you. Su Zimo took advantage of the moment when Dao Lord Sunset Cloud was in a daze and suddenly attacked. He flipped the flying sword in his hands and threw it out, piercing towards Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's head at an even faster speed. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud was a Paragon ranked 11 on the Dharma characteristic ranking after all. In a flash, He reacted and hurriedly condensed his essence spirit, controlling the incoming flying sword to deviate to the side. That flying sword was his destiny dermic weapon. Even so, the power of Su Zimo's sword toss nearly exceeded his control. The flying sword merely shifted slightly and brushed past Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's cheek, causing a bloodied wound to appear instantly. If he had reacted slower, the flying sword would have pierced his head. Instantly, Dao Lord Sunset Cloud broke out in cold sweat. There was a boom. A phantom rose from Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's body and rose rapidly. A heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. How could Dao Lord Sunset Cloud be careless after knowing Su Zimo's identity? He was prepared to summon his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic right away to protect himself. However, the moment Su Zimo threw out the flying sword, a blinding sword chi burst forth from his fingertip. It was a vast expanse of white. The killing intent was earth-shaking, heaven-slaying sword art. Poof! The sword chi entered Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's glabella and pierced a bloody hole in his head. His essence spirit was destroyed on the spot, and he could not have been more dead. Before his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic could truly be formed, it was killed by the heaven-slaying sword chi. The demon beast, the gold-eater rat, beneath him was sliced into two by the heaven-slaying sword chi as well and died on the spot. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's eyes gradually dimmed. He was still a step too late. If he had released his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, he would not have been defeated so quickly given his combat strength. Unfortunately, in a fight between experts, an instant was everything. The moment Sunset Cloud heard the words, "I'm Desolate Marshal," that momentary lapse of attention was enough to determine his death. Chapter 1258, Boundless Golden Light. Chapter 1258, Boundless Golden Light. Desolate Marshal, how dare you? A Dao Lord of Chaos Essence sect hollered. We have a mighty figure nearby, and yet you dare to be so arrogant? Do you really think that Chaos Essence sect is weak? Su Zimo sneered coldly and put away Dao Lord Sunset Cloud's storage bag casually. I don't know if Chaos Essence sect is weak. However, since this person dared to attack me, I'll kill him. To the cultivators, this was a normal occurrence. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud was foolish and wanted to snatch Desolate Marshal's treasure. He deserved to be killed. A Dao Lord of Chaos Essence sect had long taken out a messenger talisman from his storage bag and crushed it. If nothing went wrong, a conjoint body mighty figure of Chaos Essence sect would arrive soon. Su Zimo frowned. It was not that he was afraid of Chaos Essence sect's mighty figure. If he released his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, he could suppress ordinary conjoint body mighty figures and could even fight against Chaos Essence sect's mighty figure. However, the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was about to open up and the situation inside was unknown. Condensing a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic to fight against a mighty figure of Chaos Essence sect would definitely require a lot of energy. If anything were to happen in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, things would be troublesome. Furthermore, he had yet to see the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir and Buddha Beads. Once the Buddha Beads appeared, they would cause a huge battle as well. That was the true test. It was not worth it to fight to the death with a mighty figure of Chaos Essence sect now. At that thought, Su Zimo was prepared to leave and avoid the attack temporarily. What are you doing? When the Dao Lords of Chaos Essence sect saw that Su Zimo was about to leave, they shouted one after another in a fierce manner. A mighty figure of our sect is about to arrive. Are you trying to escape? Who dares to stop me if I want to leave? Su Zimo swept his gaze and said coldly. Although more than 10 Dao Lords of Chaos Essence sect surrounded Su Zimo, none of them dared to step forward, let alone stop him. Over the years, Desolate Marshal's reputation had been way too great. It was said that Desolate Marshal had already condensed a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 80 feet tall at the Void Reversion Realm. Up till this point of their cultivation, the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords had yet to condense heaven and earth Dharma characteristics that were 80 feet tall. Dao Lord Sunset Cloud, the only one who had cultivated a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was 84 feet tall, was killed by Desolate Marshal before he could even release his Dharma characteristic. Later on, it was said that when Desolate Marshal entered the Dharma characteristic realm, he cultivated two 85 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. None of them dared to fight against such terrifying combat strength. "Where is Desolate Marshal?" Right then, a holler sounded from afar with endless rage and killing intent. "It's Elder Lei Lai." The Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect were delighted. Su Zimo no longer hesitated and sped into the distance. "Elder Lei Lai has arrived. Let's see where else you can escape to." When the Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect heard that a conjoint body mighty figure of their sect had arrived, they became even bolder and shifted horizontally, blocking Su Zimo's path. To them, Elder Lei Lai had already rushed over, and Su Zimo would definitely not dare to be entangled with them out of cowardice. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo's expression turned cold when he saw that the Dharma characteristic Tao Lords did not know what was good for them and even dared to attack him. He closed his fingers and gathered the heaven-slaying sword art, releasing more than 10 sword chi in succession. After cultivating for close to 5,000 years in the Tao inheritance ground, Su Zimo's comprehension of the heaven-slaying sword art was no longer comparable to before. The fact that Tao Lord Hatred could receive the heaven-slaying sword chi with his terrifying combat strength did not mean that other Dharma characteristic Tao Lords could as well. Bang! 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 Sensing danger, those Dharma characteristic Tao Lords released their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics right away. Dharma characteristics that were more than 70 feet tall rose one after another, emitting powerful auras with immense might. However, the heaven-slaying sword chi descended the moment those heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were formed. Chi, chi, chi. Sword chi struck the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics one after another. In front of everyone, the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were sliced into two by the white sword chi and dissipated instantly. Even heaven and earth Dharma characteristics that were more than 70 feet tall could not stop the heaven-slaying sword chi. What was even more terrifying was that after destroying the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, the heaven-slaying sword chi still had remnant might and slashed at some of Chaos Essence sect's Tao Lords. Some Dharma characteristic Tao Lords could not dodge in time and were cut into two on the spot by the heaven-slaying sword chi. The sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword chi surged into their bodies and destroyed the life force within instantly. Even their consciousnesses were sliced into pieces and their essence spirits were destroyed. Some of the Chaos Essence sect Tao Lords were decisive and abandoned their physical bodies right away, escaping into the distance with their essence spirits. That was the only way they survived. All the cultivators gasped when they saw that. It was too tragic. None of those Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect were nobodies in the cultivation world. Otherwise, they would not have dared to come to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Unfortunately, those Tao Lords of Chaos Essence sect were killed on the spot by the sword chi released by Su Zimo's fingertip. There were always various rumors about Desolate Marshal in the cultivation world. They spoke of his strong physique and how he was invincible within the same cultivation realm. Many cultivators were skeptical about those rumors. It was only now that the cultivators witnessed this scene that they truly understood how terrifying Su Zimo was. On the other side, a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord of Sword, sect with a long sword on his back, had a grim expression. He crushed a messenger talisman right away and summoned a mighty figure of the sect as well. It was Tao Lord Purple Sword, 9th on the previous Dharma characteristic ranking. That is one of the 3 ancient sword arts, the heaven-slaying sword art. You guys won't be able to defend against it, Tao Lord Purple Sword declared. During the battle at the Tao Inheritance Ground, many cultivators knew that Su Zimo had cultivated an extremely powerful sword technique. However, not many people knew the origin of that sword technique. Naturally, the sword sect cultivators knew about it. The reason why sword sect could be established was naturally thanks to the Sword Emperor. However, the reason why the Sword Emperor was so famous in the past was because he cultivated one of the 3 ancient sword arts. The lifeless sword art of Sword Sect was also deduced from that sword art. Desolate Martial, how dare you injure Chaos Essence Sect cultivators? Right then, Elder Lei Lai of Chaos Essence Sect arrived with an enraged beard and endless killing intent in his eyes. He attacked all of a sudden. A tremendous pressure descended. This was the might of the conjoint body realm. Instantly, heaven and earth shook. Glancing at Elder Lei Lai, Su Zimo smirked and sneered internally. Electric arcs burst forth from his body, and a pair of dermic power wings grew from his back. Thereafter, Su Zimo vanished from the spot and turned into a golden streak of light, crossing thousands of kilometers in an instant at an extremely fast speed. Although Elder Lei Lai was strong, he missed and Su Zimo had already escaped far away. In that instant, Su Zimo released 3 movement technique secret skills in succession. Apart from lightning escape and ethereal wings, there was also an escape technique he had comprehended in the Tao inheritance ground known as Boundless Golden Light. The speed of the 3 secret skills was not inferior to blood escape when they were released at the same time. Even conjoint body mighty figures could not catch up to him. Elder Lei Lai missed his attack and chased after Su Zimo without hesitation, wanting to kill the latter. However, no matter how he channeled his blood chi, released his secret skills and escape techniques, he could not shorten the distance between him and Su Zimo. Chapter 1259, 4 Vajras. Chapter 1259, 4 Vajras. Ha 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 ha. So, the renowned Tao Lord Desolate Martial is actually a cowardly rat. When Elder Lei Lai saw that he could not catch up to Su Zimo, he deliberately roared in laughter to anger the latter. Su Zimo's expression did not change, and he merely glanced at Elder Lei Lai indifferently without any interest in retorting. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was about to open up, and he had no intention of fighting against conjoint body mighty figures outside for the time being. Furthermore, he could clearly sense that more than one conjoint body mighty figure was gathering towards him. Chaos Essence Sect was not the only one targeting him. Sects like Zephyr Thunder Palace and Sword Sect wanted to kill him as well and steal his cultivation techniques and secret skills. The Middle Continent was unlike the North region. In the North region, the factions were still afraid of the Patriarch in his twilight years beneath the Dragon Burial Valley. However, this was the Middle Continent. Mahayana Patriarchs were not omniscient and omnipotent. The person from Dragon Burial Valley was already in his twilight years and had limited energy. It was impossible for him to know beforehand what danger Su Zimo would face. Even if he knew, it would be too late. That was the reason why Elder Lei Lai dared to attack Su Zimo. Desolate Martial, how heroic are you to establish the martial Tao and impart martial arts to all living beings? Aren't you ashamed now that you're fleeing like a rat? Elder Lei Lai was still unwilling to give up and shouted from behind. Many cultivators rolled their eyes. As a conjoint body mighty figure, he disregarded his status to chase after a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord and wanted the latter to stop. Yet, he was talking to the latter about shame? In their eyes, Elder Lei Lai was like an exasperated idiot who had lost his mind. There was no hint of the demeanor of a mighty figure at all. Boom! Right then, rumble sounded from the direction of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. The dermic power barrier that was initially surrounding the ancient temple gradually disappeared, attracting the attention of countless cultivators. Even Elder Lei Lai paused in his tracks and turned back. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple had opened. Nobody wanted to be left behind when the ancient temple opened. If they could enter the ancient temple first, they might gain the advantage. Elder Lei Lai was indignant, but he could only give up on his pursuit of Su Zimo for the time being. Right now, the most important thing was to enter the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple first. Frustrated, he turned around to look only to discover that Su Zimo had already made a move before him, transforming into a golden beam of light that sped towards the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Fellow Taoist Lei Lai, let's go too. Right then, the mighty figure of Sword Sect arrived beside Lei Lai. He had sneaked over earlier on to kill Desolate Martial. Unfortunately, Desolate Marshal seemed to have sensed danger beforehand and managed to avoid his ambush each time. The mighty figure of Sword Sect said, "There's a higher chance of killing that lad inside the ancient temple." "That's right." Elder Lei Lai nodded. The two of them exchanged glances and moved at the same time, heading towards the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. At that moment, in Jade Toad Ridge, the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple was like a gigantic creature with a gaping mouth as cultivators from all directions swarmed in. Initially, there were only slightly more than 2,000 cultivators that appeared near the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. However, after the opening of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, many cultivators hiding in the surroundings appeared one after another and charged into the ancient temple, wanting to fight for their own opportunities. A single Grand Primordium Ancient Temple had attracted more than 5,000 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. It was clear how flourishing the cultivation civilization of the Middle Continent was. There were 4 entrances to the ancient temple that corresponded to the 4 directions. Su Zimo entered through the north gate. When he arrived before the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, he could sense its grandeur even clearer. The walls of the ancient temple were made from a gigantic rock without any connecting gaps. It was a work of the gods. Su Zimo entered the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple with the crowd warily. Upon entering the ancient temple, his vision cleared up. The ancient temple was like a small world of its own within that was extremely spacious. A row of green lanterns were placed beneath the 4 walls of the ancient temple. There was no oil inside, and they were all extinguished. There were many portraits drawn on the 4 walls, as though they were legends of the Buddhist monasteries. Of course, the most striking things on the 4 walls were the 4 enraged Vajras in the middle. Their bodies were massive, and they were 90 feet tall. Standing upright, their eyes were widened and their eyeballs protruded with a terrifying might. Legend has it that the Buddhist monasteries had 4 great guardian Vajras. Known as the 4 heavenly kings of the Buddhist monasteries, they were the Country Pillar Heavenly King, Growth Heavenly King, Boundless Vision Heavenly King, and Infinite Hearing Heavenly King. The portraits on the 4 walls were clearly from that legend of the Buddhist monasteries. The 4 Vajras widened their eyes in rage. Although they were only paintings, they exuded endless might. All the cultivators exchanged glances and were shocked, lowering their heads instinctively. Not to mention Dharma characteristic Tao Lords, even many conjoint body mighty figures had weaker auras against the furious gazes of the 4 Vajras. Su Zimo felt even stranger. His spirit perception had been warning him the moment he stepped foot into the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. However, in the Ancient Temple, that warning no longer had much meaning. That was because Su Zimo could not tell where the danger came from. It might have originated from the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. It could also be from other cultivators. The strangest thing was that Su Zimo felt like he was being spied on the moment he entered the Ancient Temple. However, he could not tell where the spying sensation came from within the chaotic crowd. Or rather, it seemed like it came from all directions. There's indeed something evil about this ancient temple. Su Zimo frowned and murmured. Many cultivators had already dispersed. Some of them sped towards the ancient temple in search of other hidden routes in space. Some of them came beneath the walls and looked at the many Buddha statues on the walls, wanting to discover some secret from them. Some of them came before a stone pillar that could fit 10 people and started circling it. Some cultivators even ran to the green lanterns and examined them carefully, wanting to determine if they were powerful treasures. Su Zimo stood on the spot motionlessly. All of a sudden, boom! Suddenly, a gigantic stone door descended from above the 4 entrances of the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple and sealed them tightly. Instantly, the entire hall fell into darkness. Everyone present were Dharma characteristic Tao Lords. Although they could still see their surroundings clearly in the darkness, the sudden change caused quite a stir. What's going on? What happened? Which one of them triggered a trap by accident? The hall was in a mess. Swoosh! Right then, the green lanterns beneath the walls suddenly lit up. They burned with flames that flickered. Under the dim lights, the 4 Vajras looked extremely menacing, as though they were suddenly alive. Many cultivators were shocked. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Even with Su Zimo's temperament, his expression changed drastically as he gasped and felt chills run down his spine. Chapter 1260, Elixir Located. Chapter 1260, Elixir Located. However, before long, many cultivators realized that it was only because of the dim lights that caused the shadows of the 4 Buddhist Vajras to stretch and form the effect. The initially restless crowd gradually calmed down. Right from the beginning, Su Zimo had been silent with a grim expression. After that shock, many cultivators even forgot that the 4 entrances to the Grand Primordium ancient temple had been completely sealed. The group of them, be it Dharma characteristic Tao Lords or conjoint body mighty figures, were trapped in the ancient temple. Right then, a cultivator realized this and observed the entrances of the Grand Primordium ancient temple, shouting, "Everyone, take a look. The entrances are completely sealed. What are you afraid of?" Another person did not mind at all. "There are so many Tao Lords and mighty figures among us. At most, we'll join forces to break through this stone door. Could this ancient temple still trap us here?" Boom! On the other side, a loud bang sounded. It was an attack from a conjoint body mighty figure that was attempting to break through the gate. Bang! 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 The conjoint body mighty figure attacked the stone door consecutively and released a powerful and ferocious power. However, the stone door did not budge at all. Against the stone door, the power of the conjoint body mighty figure was like a rock that was cast into the sea, vanishing without a trace. There's no way out of this ancient temple. The conjoint body mighty figure had a terrible expression. Even if all the conjoint body mighty figures here join forces, we won't be able to shatter this stone door. Suddenly, another situation occurred. Bang! Boom! Boom! A series of violent explosions sounded from the depths of the ancient temple. Many cultivators felt that they could not steady themselves and leaped into the air hurriedly. Even so, the void where the cultivators could see was still distorted. Even if they released their spirit consciousnesses, they would not be able to see far beyond the shattered distortion. Immediately after, all the cultivators felt as though they were drawn in by a strange power. The world spun as they passed through the voids and arrived in another space. Su Zimo had the same experience and feelings. It was an indescribable feeling that was both familiar and strange. He could not resist the attraction. In a daze, many cultivators focused their gazes and were shocked to discover that they had already left the main hall of the Grand Primordium ancient temple and arrived in another secret chamber. The secret chamber was completely sealed without any gaps, and tough walls were everywhere. Of course, although it was a secret chamber, its size was unimaginable and resembled a gigantic palace. Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings. Initially, there were more than 5,000 of them in the main hall of the ancient temple. At that moment, there were only slightly more than 500 people in this secret chamber with him. It was as though the group of cultivators had been forcefully separated. It must be the same for the other cultivators apart from the 500-odd people in this secret chamber. They must have been separated into their own individual secret chambers. How could this be? Could we have triggered some trap or formation? Su Zimo frowned in thought. Normally speaking, the most likely reason for such a phenomenon to happen in the Grand Primordium ancient temple was because of a trap formation. However, he surveyed his surroundings for a long time and could not find any signs of any formation patterns or traps. A connate dermic weapon. Right then, a cultivator picked up an ancient mirror on a table in the secret chamber and examined it carefully before exclaiming. Although the ancient mirror looked unassuming, after wiping away the dust on it, one could clearly see that there were 6 dermic patterns etched on the surface of the ancient mirror. That voice attracted the attention of many cultivators. Initially, the 500-odd cultivators trapped in the secret chamber were still worried about how they were going to get out. However, at that moment, many cultivators dispersed and searched the secret chamber, wanting to discover more treasures. Perfect bone corrosion sword. A sword sect cultivator picked up a secret manual and was delighted when he opened it. The reason why he came this time round was because he wanted to find an ancient sword art. This perfect bone corrosion sword was lost in the ancient era and was extremely powerful. To think that it would be found in the Grand Primordium ancient temple. Before long, cultivators found what they wanted. The number of treasures in this secret chamber was unimaginable. Suzimo could only suppress his curiosity for the time being. He sniffed gently and headed in a direction. His 5 senses were sharp, and if there were any elixirs, he could smell them right away. In the blink of an eye, Suzimo arrived beside an elixir furnace. There were many spirit medicine shelves beside the cauldron with rows of spirit herbs that emitted a rich medicinal fragrance. Some cultivators who had arrived earlier were grabbing wildly. In fact, some of the cultivators were already fighting. Suzimo did not move and merely lingered around the elixir furnace. Thereafter, his gaze gradually froze. Squatting down, he peeled away the ashes beneath the elixir furnace and revealed half a jade bottle. Suzimo took the jade bottle over and opened the bottle stopper as his eyes lit up with a glint. There were 2 9 Revolution Soul Return elixirs within. The 9 Revolution Soul Return elixirs were not placed on the shelves, but buried in the ashes. With the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixirs, his purpose for this trip was halved. What Suzimo had to do next was to search for the Buddha beads and return alive. All of a sudden, his expression changed, as though he sensed something. Without even turning back, he swung his arm and flung it behind him. At the same time, a figure appeared behind him and stabbed towards him with a sword. Piak! Suzimo's palm collided with the sword and did a coil, tremble and yank. He snatched the sword over. Without even looking at it, Suzimo threw the sword in reverse. Poof! A flash of blood appeared. The sword pierced the cultivator's chest. However, that person's body shifted slightly and avoided fatal damage. Suzimo closed 2 fingers and slashed gently at the person. He seized the sword and counterattacked, releasing sword chi. The series of counterattacks were fluid as water without any pauses at all. Chi. No matter how the Dharma characteristic Tao Lord struggled, he could not dodge the heaven-slaying sword chi. The Dharma characteristic Tao Lord was sliced into 2 by his own flying sword, and his essence spirit was destroyed on the spot. Without even looking, Suzimo already knew that this was a Dharma characteristic of the Fiend sect's Hidden Death sect. Apart from Hidden Death sect, no other sect would be able to sneak behind him stealthily and at such a close distance. He had just obtained the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixirs and did not expect to attract killing intent so quickly. Desolate Marshal, hand over the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixirs. A conjoint body mighty figure strode towards Suzimo with a burning gaze and immense might. How dare you covet something of mine? You must have a death wish. Suzimo's gaze turned cold. This conjoint body mighty figure had no sect or faction. Unless he had any powerful trump cards, it would be extremely easy for Suzimo to kill him without even using his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. When this conjoint body mighty figure saw Suzimo being chased by Lei Lai outside the ancient temple, he thought that Desolate Marshal was nothing much and thus wanted to fight for the 9 Revolution Soul Return elixirs. However, what he did not know was that that was outside the Grand Primordium ancient temple. Everything was unknown. The 9 Revolution Soul Return elixirs and Buddha bead had not appeared yet. There was naturally no way Suzimo was going to fight Lei Lai. But now, even if he was up against Lei Lai, he would not retreat. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.